This is the Environmental Protection Commission regular meeting and public hearings, Wednesday, October 9th, 2024. This is a regular meeting. We're on new business, EPC 24-2024, PL 24-133, 84 Camp Avenue, A. Curry Love, to remove a pipe, regrade, and install mitigation landscaping in and approximate to wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the north side of Camp Avenue, the access of which lies approximately 1,400 feet east of Hoyt Street, and is identified as map number 8, lot number 231. The zone is 1/3 and is approximately 0.339 acres.
Mr. Chairman, this application has made its way to the agenda for acceptance only this evening, meaning that they supplied the minimum information and we'll move forward as over the next several weeks of doing a review and outlining the information necessary to move forward with the application. It's also allows this opportunity tonight for the commission to, of course, start the statutory time clock and decide if a public hearing is necessary and offer some brief comments for those of you who have gone to the site. I've been to the property. I have a feel for some of the things that will be necessary, and we'll be generating a list in the next couple days.
Does any commission member have a questions or comments for?
I don't, thank you.
No questions.
Oh, sir. Carolyn?
Not yet, no. Not tonight.
Okay, well, if you have anything to further review, please contact
Okay.
Rick directly. Moving on, the next one is EPC 25-2024, or PL 24-139, 130 West Avenue, 130 West Avenue LLC, to construct a new single-family dwelling. Driveway, walkways, drainage, utilities, and other related features proximate to the wetlands, watercourses, and floodplain of Stony Brook. The property lies along the west side of West Avenue, approximately 700 feet east of Old Parish Road, and is identified as map number 19, lot number 5. The zone is R1/2, and it is approximately 0.63 acres.
So, Chairman, this application has made its way to the agenda tonight to start the statutory time clock and allow the board the opportunity to decide if a public hearing is necessary and to offer any brief comments. The application itself is there's a demolition of an existing dwelling that's there, a deteriorated dwelling on the property, and to construct a new single-family dwelling and all its attendant facilities proximate to wetlands, watercourses, in the floodplain of Stony Brook.
Michael?
I would say, based on the location of the property and close abutters, there would be interest in a public hearing.
I agree with that. I would suggest a public hearing by virtue of public interest and also impact on the wetlands.
I can support Commissioner Irvin's recommendation. I have not been to the site to walk it or understand it better, but I'm quite sure I know the home you're talking about. It's 2 doors or so down from the scout cabin.
Yep,
And I
actually,
remember the conversations.
3 across the river.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The conversations regarding it then, so I think Mr. Irvin makes a good suggestion. I would second that.
I agree. I think, because for what Peter mentioned, because of environmental impact and in the public interest, raising a structure and, putting in a larger structure with more impervious, greater impervious surface. And I have some questions about it, but we can, we don't have to discuss them tonight. When we have the public hearing, I can raise them.
Just make sure give them to Rick so that the applicant can respond. Okay, yeah, this is a very interesting piece of property. I think it's been abandoned for a number of years.
Appears to.
A number of years. Anyway, so I'm very interested. I have a particular interest in the planting plan, and I think we need a public hearing also on this. Do we need a vote?
Motion.
Okay. Can you make a motion to have a public hearing?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. With respect to the application for EPC number 25-2024, it's recommended that there be a public hearing for a future meeting on 130 West Avenue.
For the purpose of public interest and impact on the wetlands.
Thank you for finishing my sentence.
Sorry about that. I second the motion for public hearing related to 25-2024 for purposes of interest of the public interest, and also impact on the wetlands.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, EPC 26-2024, PL 24-143, 15 Weeds Landing, D. Venny and J. Venny, to construct residential additions, garage, patio, drainage, and other related features proximate to Holly Pond and other areas of resource. Property lies along the terminus of Weeds Landing, approximately 500 feet south of the Boston Post Road, and is identified as map number 53, lot number 61. E as in Eric, the zone is R1/2, and it is approximately 0.54 acres.
Mr. Chairman, the application has made its way to the agenda for acceptance only, meaning start the statutory time clock, determine if a public hearing is necessary, and to secure any comments you may have, initial comments you may have on the application itself for those who have gone to the site and reviewed the materials. The application itself is to construct some residential additions, garage, patio, drainage, and I think one thing those Neckland, they are doing a small pool in there too, with retaining walls. And I'm available for answering questions.
Michael?
Is the first question whether a public hearing should be considered? Is that a question?
No,
have to make
if you
a
feel there is, there is. Okay, if you don't feel there is, then someone
I'm
else
sorry,
could bring
I
it
thought-
up, but that's, you have your opinion.
I wasn't sure if I misheard. I thought, did Rick open with that? Whether a public hearing is
Well,
should be considered?
it's one of the determinations the commission, if they feel that there's public interest or is a significant environmental impact. I think it's important to note this one is it's before the board because it's proximate to Holly Pond. There's no wetlands on this property. And it's not in the floodplain. It's just because it lies within 100 feet of Holly Pond.
I can see why, I don't have any questions regarding the application. I can see why there may be public interest. I don't see a reason to have a public hearing on this personally.
I don't have any questions.
I have no questions for tonight's meeting, like Eric.
Carolyn?
I don't see a reason for a public hearing. Also, I have a couple of quick questions. I noticed on the site development plan under the notes, it said, under no circumstances shall trench water be allowed to drain off through the sanitary sewer lines, and I thought that was interesting, and I just thought, is that something that
I think they probably, this is a general note on their plan.
Yeah, but I mean,
It's always good,
right, I mean, I was
positive
just wondering
practice.
if that's something that has been occurring and we just weren't aware of it, and is it something that we should routinely be checking the box and asking?
I don't think so. I think that's just
Okay.
them being extraordinarily careful.
No, that's a rule in the town of Darien.
Yeah, no, I know it
Okay,
shouldn't
so,
be,
so
but,
a good,
yeah,
not that it's not violated,
right.
okay, but it is,
I
that's
just
a
wondered if it
rule.
was something that
Yeah,
has been occurring in
I
practice.
think they just threw it in, yeah.
Okay, all right, I just had never
In
seen
the
that
past,
before.
no, to answer your question, in the past, yes, on a regular basis, yeah.
On a regular basis, so that's something
It
that's
used to be
going
a
forward.
long time ago, like it used to
Okay.
be commonplace for that to happen.
Okay, but not so much anymore, okay, all right, because, yes, I agree, it definitely should not be happening. And Also under general notes on the landscape plan, I noticed, again, this is just something that I sometimes see happens where it talks about the possibility of plant substitutions. I just want to make sure that when substitutions are made that they're native and they're straight natives. And also just with regard, basically when a property is, abuts Holly Pond or a significant watercourse or even wetlands, I feel like, they should be practicing organic land care, and they should not be using synthetic pesticides and soil amendments. And so I just want to make sure that in those areas where there's a little bit of wiggle room, where they can make substitutions and things after we've approved it, that they adhere to what the spirit of what we've approved.
Okay, anybody else?
Actually, that's an interesting point you just made. Rick, does EPC have the jurisdiction to specify indigenous species, only indigenous species of
Well, when we
plants?
review the applications, we're looking at straight natives, so we've made it very clear in the last couple of years of that's what their selections should focus on.
Legally, is that an allowable requirement? If the
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
Because we're approving the planting plan.
We were trying to increase the conservation value of the property, not, if they want to put whatever plants somewhere else that's outside of our jurisdiction, I don't have a problem with that. But in our jurisdiction, in our area, in the upland review area and so forth, I feel, if we're asking them to put plants in, they should be improving the conservation value of the property, not just putting plants in.
I'm agreeing with you. I was just asking
if we have the authority.
If truly the commission, we can encourage people, or in some circumstances regulate that. But if we have the absolute control to do that, so anyways, that was a talking point. The other piece I was just going to ask about is, were you just saying to Rick, for landscaping planting plans, you were suggesting that the landscapers or whomever is putting the planting plan together actually specifies if the plant is a native species? So if we're looking, because I actually think it's a really good idea, is if you're looking at a planting plan and you just see the tabular format, right? Green giant arborvitae, I don't think that's a native species.
It's not.
So non-native, and then another plant, native species. So as commissioners, when we're looking at this, because I can tell you I'm not an expert in botanical names, at least we're seeing whether they're native or not. I mean, could we just say, hey, that's a good idea, and make that a practice here in Darien?
I bring it up on almost every application.
I'm sorry, I'm so late to the show here. I think that's a really good, I don't know.
And
the light bulb just went off.
But
I just had an epiphany.
It's the same thing with the lawn care. I feel, like if your property sits on the Stony Brook, or this property which, abuts Holly Pond, you shouldn't be putting, glyphosate on the weeds that are on your property. I mean, you should be practicing, hiring people who practice organic land care principles. And I forget the gentleman's first name, but Mr. Williams from the Thorndale Circle project that we had a few meetings ago, he said it's becoming more and more, like it used to be really rare and expensive to do that, but it's becoming, people want it, and it's becoming much more commonplace and much less costly. So I think that when, someone's property abuts one of these watercourses, I think we should be strongly encouraging them to do that.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Anybody else on this application? Okay, moving on. EPC 27-2024, PL 24-144, 81 Goodwives River Road, R. Lisetto, to install an underground propane tank, elevate an existing air conditioning condensing unit, install a generator, relocate a fence, and conduct other related activities proximate to the special flood hazard areas wetlands and watercourses, the Goodwise River and Gorham's Pond. Property lies across the west side of Goodwise River Road at the intersection with Sunswick, and is identified as map number 49, lot number 4. The zone is R1, and it is approximately 0.3874 acres.
Mr. Chairman, the application has made its way through the agenda this evening. Again, to start the process, accepting the application only, that for the commission to decide if a public hearing is necessary, and if there are any preliminary comments you might have. I've been to the site, in fact, I was there today, and we'll be generating a list of information that would be necessary to move forward with the application.
Michael, you have anything?
I'm agnostic to a public hearing on the application. I think there might be some public interest. Aside from that, I have no questions or comments.
Quite an interesting property. No questions except to confirm that the fence is being moved 2 feet, only for the purposes of allowing for the installation and servicing of the air conditioning and generator units. It's what I think is the purpose of this, but I just want to be sure.
Purpose is that they're going to elevate, it's a very de minimis kind of application.
Yeah.
It's, and in fact, they have to go through some number of variances and you know, the various land use boards. Even it's this small of a project, they're elevating an air conditioner condensing unit
Sure.
to get out of the floodplain.
Yeah.
They're doing a, you know, backup generator, and they're doing a propane tank all in, a tank and the generator in uplands outside of the flood zone.
Yeah. Very
So,
sympathetic
it's-
to the purpose.
Yes.
It's a very,
So moving the fence is, the only reason the fence is being moved is to make that installation, or to make the installation and some servicing
yes, it's
space.
to make
Perfect.
things work.
Yep, okay. No questions.
I have not been to the site, but I can kind of picture it quite carefully. I just came back from being out of the country. Reading the description of the effort here says to me this is a very worthwhile project. But I will get to the site before our next meeting so I can comment further if necessary.
Carolyn?
I just have a couple questions. So first, the propane tank, it seems like it's kind of far away from the generator, or 125 feet. Is that excessive or not?
I mean, they're finding a space, you know, there may be conflicts. I see there's a pump there that they probably have to avoid. There are setbacks that are relative,
Okay.
and it's not an above-ground tank, it's a below-ground tank.
Right.
So
right.
is it excessive? No, I've seen it hundreds of feet
Okay,
away.
okay, not super familiar with buried
Mhm.
tanks, that's why I'm asking. And also, again, not being super familiar with these underground tanks, is a 500-gallon tank typical for a structure this size?
I mean, if it's, they usually generally size them for what the purpose is.
Mm-hmm.
So if it were just for the generator, it may be a lot smaller, maybe a bottle as opposed to an in-ground tank. It may be for larger, you know, more significant uses. It may be a 500, it might be 1,000 gallon if they're doing the whole house and all their appliances. So they really, the volume has to do with what the use is going to be.
Mm-hmm. And then, you know, typically in a situation like this, as we've discussed, you know, when there's activity in the upland review area, we usually try to ask them to do some little small thing to increase the conservation value of the property. And I didn't notice a lot of native plantings there, so I was wondering maybe we could ask them to put a few in. I noticed, you know, there's a lot of pachysandra and English ivy, but, you know, if they could maybe substitute a few native plants for some
Okay.
of that, it might be a good idea.
Carolyn, is that it?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, that's it.
So, okay. Anybody else? Okay, moving on to old business, EPC 14-2024, PL 24-9510 Nickerson Lane, J. Vinci and L. Vinci to install a residential dock consisting of a fixed pier, ramp, and float in and along Holly Pond and other areas of resource. The property lies along the south side of Nickerson Lane, approximately 715 feet west of Nearwater Lane, and is identified as map number 52, lot number 8. The zone is R1, and is approximately 0.989 acres. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, this is on the agenda tonight. The details had been vetted at prior meetings, and at the last meeting, the commission directed me to develop a resolution for the board's consideration. So the terms of that, the summary of the characteristics, impacts are before you, as well as recommended conditions of an approval should the board or commission decide to move forward.
Okay, I believe every commissioner's received this and have questions or comments. You've said your,
I have not, because I had trouble opening the resolution
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, no, it would
I
get stuck in
couldn't-
the, yeah.
Couldn't open it to do my typical review and comment for us all, so maybe I can get a little help from your office tomorrow, Rick, and I will do that for us all.
Were you doing it on the iPad?
I tried to print from the iPad, because typically
Yeah.
I print, mark it up if there's edits,
I-
and send it over
I
that
couldn't do
way.
it from the iPad, so.
Couldn't get it to
I-
open.
Right, yeah, I was able to do it from my laptop.
were you guys able to?
I was able to open it, but I didn't try printing it.
No. What do you want to do? Do you want to hold this off or have a,
I mean, I would like to move forward with it, since they've been patient, it was vetted. There were no issues, questions, and concerns. They did a real extensive planting plan that we're working with the designer to tweak, but generally the commission was very satisfied with it. It is a very de minimis project. It is only a small dock and pier. It's been vetted additionally through planning and zoning has already approved it. The state DEP has already endorsed it.
Yes.
I think, and the conditions are typical for these many docks that we see. So,
so what does the commission feel?
I have the same recollection as Rick summarizes, and
Okay.
I wouldn't want to hold them up.
Why don't we say that, I'll ask for a vote, and then if you get your.
I'll get Rick's help to
Your
open it,
edits.
and if I find any edits, I'll send them along to
Okay,
Rick's office.
okay. So do you want to propose a,
Sure. With respect to EPC number 14-2024, with regard to 10 Nickerson Lane, I urge an acceptance and approval of the resolution in hand that's under consideration for the advancing this project.
Second, the resolution for 14-2024.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
So it'll be 4-0, and I'll abstain. Okay, moving on. It's EPC 18-2024 PL 24-106, 150 Pear Tree Point Road, D Bulletin, to install an in-ground pool, spa, patio, drainage, and other related features proximate to wetlands. The property lies along the east side of Pear Tree Point Road, approximately 925 feet south of Crane Road, and is identified as map number 60, lot number 42. The zone is R1, and it is approximately 1.001 acres.
Mr. Chairman, this item is on for discussion this evening. It was accepted at a prior hearing. Information request had been generated. The application is to install an in-ground pool, spa, water feature, patio, drainage, walls, and other features on this property. The property does not have inland wetlands on it. It lies proximate to other sites that have inland wetlands on it. but it also has special flood hazard areas that affect portions of the site. The property lies along the east side of Pear Tree Point Road, and it's just south of Crane Road. It's also in the coastal zone, and there are, what you identify as coastal resources that are there, including coastal flood hazard areas, shorelands. It's near an estuarine embayment, which would be, the harbor. There was a soils report that was prepared, and again, there was no wetlands identified on the property. Most of the property had been classified as Charlton Fine Sandy Loam and Eudorthans. Vegetation in the buffer to the wetlands on the adjoining properties range from manicured lawn to ornamental landscaping in light woods. About a third of the property is in the flood zone, and that is with the deepest and more turbulent waters that are going to be along Pear Tree Point Road. The more ponded waters are behind the existing building, and in the space that's going to be occupied by the pool and terraces. This property had been part of a prior EPC permit application, I think in 1994. It was building of a house and drainage and septic areas. The application itself, again, involves all these elements, but we typically are interested in, as part of our review, determination as to the necessity of drainage to mitigate any adverse impacts, to protect resources, to ensure water quality, and to look for opportunities or comply with the flood regulations, but also to look for opportunities to enhance the conservation values of the regulated areas in the property, and to make those conservation enhancements valued and suitable for the application. Just some points of interest. A site development plan was provided. Again, no direct inland wetland encroachments. The applicant reports that the encroachments affect about 2,300 square feet of the upland review area, temporary or permanently, and 2,900 square feet of the special flood hazard area. And again, all the encroachments are not in the velocity zone. They're in the less turbulent AE zone, which is essentially ponded water. Most of the space that is affected, again, is lawn and ornamental plantings. Grade changes, low to moderate range, not expected to exceed 2 or 3 feet. Applicants commit to remove excess fill from site, and structures are generally no less than 25 feet to the wetland on the adjoining properties. Grading approaches a bit closer to the regulated areas. Tree loss, based on gaining access, is nominal, generally limited to, there's some shrubs, more like foundation plantings as opposed to significant trees of size. The project engineer, had developed a statement and a report to address the issue of drainage and water quality. He notes he did define existing and proposed conditions, assess the additional impervious surface, and is determined to treat that runoff by adding to the existing drainage system that is already present on the property. As a result of doing that, he was able to confirm that the addition of the pool and patio will not cause any adverse drainage impacts or impacts to adjoining properties for the various, in terms of peak rates of runoff for all the storms that we typically examine through the 50-year. They are adding, I think it was like 6 additional concrete galleries. The plans and reports had been submitted to our peer reviewer, who has just endorsed the study methodology and the impact assessment just today. The applicant has submitted a statement concerning will not adversely impact flood heights. Structural details for the pool patio have yet to be provided. However, the engineer asserts that the elements can be designed and certified by an engineer in advance of a building permit. One of the things that we do see is, that they did make a point of showing on there was the pool equipment will be elevated a foot above the base flood, but we require further details and certifications to ensure that those elements will not, one, be adversely impacted, and two, will not be affected by flooding as to impact others or the existing structures and features. The engineer has stated that the alternative is to reduce the encroachments to regulations or reduce the exposure to essential project elements to flooding are limited due to the required building and septic setbacks that are applied. Mr. Similides is here, he can further examine that or explain his position on that. Encroachments and mitigation efforts were not initially proposed at the time of this, but there has been a planting plan that was submitted yesterday for some of the spaces adjoining the pool. I have not reviewed it in detail. I believe it was posted yesterday, and I don't know if you had a chance to, but we'll let Mr. Similides expand on that discussion as well.
Okay.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Andy Similides. I'm a principal and professional engineer with Land Tech out of Westport. The subject property is 150 Pear Tree Point Road. So I'll just go through some of those elements quickly. I'll start really with the site restrictions and the siting of the pool and how we came about it. So as Mr. Talamelli mentioned, this line here is the off-site wetlands. This dashed line here is the upland review area, the regulated area. Here in red, you could see that's the building setbacks. And then here in green is the existing septic. So it's a pretty robust septic system. Tank and pump chamber that gets pumped up to 4 separate galleries. So they're separating distances from septic, which is 25 feet. So this kind of is shoehorned in here, right along the building setbacks and, the necessary setbacks from septic. It's a very small pool. It's a 10 by 22 pool with a spa. It's a pretty unique design, I would say. There's a freestanding wall that kind of encircles this piece of the back edge of that pool and patio to kind of create a backdrop. It's more of an aesthetic thing. That would also allow us right behind that wall to elevate the pool equipment and kind of hide that out of sight. So just so you could see that visually. There's a little rendering here that the landscape architect created. Again, pool, spa, a little water feature here, a slightly terraced patio to work with the existing grades and elevations, and again, that freestanding wall that's in the back there. It starts at 2.5 feet, and at the peak it's 5.5 feet, and it's really an aesthetic design element, but it also services to hide that pool equipment that'll be elevated 1 foot above the base flood. Access to the site for construction purposes. We would come off of the existing driveway. There's a little bump out here. We'd have a construction entrance. The existing drainage, which is concrete galleries, is in the vicinity that we'll traverse. We would plate that just for added protection when we come into the property to make sure, typically concrete galleries are H20 loaded anyways, but to further protect those elements, existing elements, we played over that to gain access to the rear yard. Drainage is handled by various trench drains along the patio edges, bottom of walls. You basically drain in all directions away from the pool, and we put trench drains basically around the entire perimeter to make sure we capture all that new impervious surface. That all will then get piped up here, and you can see here in blue those 6 additional concrete galleries that we're adding onto the existing system right here in the front of the house. All of this work is outside the regulated area, so all the water treatment, all the water handling is happening well beyond the regulated area. There is some work that's being done, obviously, within the regulated area in order to, again, what I described earlier, citing the pool and its location. There really is no other location on this piece of property to site this. And what we added here is basically a 10-foot wide buffer planting with true natives, as you guys like. So
You learn.
those are, and I know it's kind of last minute, we originally just put in a 10-foot buffer without really calling out all the species. We then put in a plant list here of some taller shrubs and then some lower lying shrubs along that buffer. So I think we have about 12, 21, like 31 shrubs along that buffer. This is the closest proximity to this wetlands and where our pool is, so it just makes sense. There's I think an existing willow here that we're looking to remove, and then create that planting buffer. So, again,
I think they were maintaining the willow. Didn't have tree protection. Or is that a change?
on the first one.
That was the first plan.
The first plan, and then consulting with the LA and our environmental team, and they said, willows are invasive. I'm not a tree expert, but this is what I'm being told. If you want the willow to stay, I'm sure we could keep it, but they thought it doesn't have the value as a wetland planting. Again, this meets the storm requirement up to the 50-year storm, provides the necessary water quality, which is most critical and adjacent to wetlands. That's pretty much it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Luckily, on top.
Sure. Is that the existing pump chamber for the septic?
Correct.
Do you know approximately how close the willow tree is to I'm looking at the compass, to the north, so the willow to the north of the pool? Do you know what the distance is?
So our buffer is about 10 feet, and the willow's basically 10 feet off that property line.
Is there any reason why, if you're going through the whole exercise of building a new patio and a pool, is there a reason why you couldn't, I know that I don't know, I think it's more a setback issue and not a design issue. Is there a reason why you wouldn't move the pump chamber and try and bring the pool more inboard of the setback and out of the upland review area? I know, I can see the upland, I have a bunch of questions, but the leading, or sequential questions. So the first, I guess, just to go back, is there a reason why the pump chamber couldn't move to an alternate location?
Is there a reason they couldn't? Probably not, because when you're pumping, you can kind of put a pump anywhere.
Right.
But the gallery is really what is also creating a pinch point there.
No, I understand that.
You're saying to push it closer to the house?
Further, okay, so then here's the next question, is I just, looking at patterns, is wetlands flag number 1. Looking at the topography, and I haven't been to the site, can you explain why, I would expect that the wetlands would continue along the northerly border. Why, can you explain why there's only, why the wetland stops on the way that it's shown on the plan?
Sure. So wetland flag 1 is the last field delineated wetland flag. And then we didn't continue flagging off our property.
No, I mean closer to the pool.
Correct. So this was the last wetland flag. So this was delineated in the field by a wetland soil scientist. And then there was historic mapping of wetlands in this area. And the wetlands actually went like just over our property line by like 5 feet. Our wetland soil scientists, when they went and explored, there was no wetlands in that vicinity on our property. So we cut it off right at the property line. And that's also what the GIS mapping shows. So that's where this line comes in from, the town's GIS line. And it also kind of correlates with previous wetland mappings.
So the area that's shaded where the willow tree, is that wetland?
No, this is our planted buffer. I'm sorry, I used the same color, but, so this is a vegetated buffer. So there's no wetlands on our property anywhere.
And is that, okay, anecdotally, can you explain why you think why that is the case? Is it topography, or is it just entirely different soils?
Yeah, it's based on soil conditions. That's how they delineate where the wetlands are. They take.
Well, no, what I'm saying is if you have a depression, if you have an elevated position and a depressed position, and you have wetlands abutting this area, one would quickly be able to surmise that that's wetland, right?
Right.
So this area that's right on the property line is not wetland. But I'm looking at the elevation. Can you help me out? You got a lot of stuff on this map.
So I don't think we have topography off-site there. To see what's.
You have
the
your
topography
10-foot
here.
You have 10-foot contours, right? Yep. Is that at 10 foot of elevation? If you see the willow tree, there's 10 in the square. There's 10.1 on the, so you're 6.9. So you go from 10, I'm looking at the proposed pool, right? Right on the corner of the pool,
Yep.
there's a 10, right?
Correct.
So that picks up a contour, I think.
Correct.
And then your next one, in the drip line of the willow?
Correct. So the next
Is
one
9, okay?
And the next one's 8.
And then you jump to 7. Well, maybe there's 8 in between.
There's an 8 there. There's a
So there's
7.9.
so what we're saying is there's a
From where our pool is to here.
There's a
Yeah.
3 foot change in elevation.
Correct.
Okay. I mean, my general comment regarding pools, and historically, I think I've voiced this concern to the commission, is that my sense is that I'd like to, I think, regulated activities that cause disturbances to the wetlands should at any cost be conducted outside the upland review area. Understanding that there's constraints to place these amenities, then buffers should be created to protect the upland review area from a whole lot of things Caroline likes to talk about, like endangered species buffers,
Right.
hardscape buffers, plantings that mitigate manicured lawns, knowing that abutting this property is all manicured lawn. So I would encourage the applicant to consider a site plan that tries to remove the size and the scope and the location outside the upland review area. And then also the engineer come up and a landscape architect come up with better buffer between the pool and the wetland, and specifically protecting that willow, because that's a nice tree there. Those are the comments I have.
Good.
The pool will not have a fence, is that correct?
Correct. There's an existing fence that goes around the entire property.
Is that square that's closest to the pool, or is that the property line fence?
So there's a metal fence that comes off the corner of the house here,
Yep,
goes along the entire boundary,
yep.
and then comes back in right in here, this corner of the house. So the entire backyard's already fenced in.
I didn't see the planning plan,
It's not on there.
not in there,
No,
yeah.
with the site plan that was put up in late September, doesn't include it.
So
September 26th.
yeah, just to follow up on Mike Irwin's point, I think some rigorous planting plan, especially for the upland review area around that, and also to create some sort of boundary to prevent that from being lawnscaped with fertilizers would be helpful.
Okay.
I have nothing to add to these two commissioners' comments.
Carolyn?
The planting plan, I heard that it's available. I did not see it online. So I would just be interested to see the plant list. But I agree that I think it could be a little bit deeper. I mean, it's pretty long, which is good. It goes that whole stretch of the yard, but I think it could be a little bit wider than 10 feet. Would like to see the planting plans. So you said that the pool channel drains are draining into the new detention system.
Into the existing, but the existing's being added
Yeah,
onto.
okay, because then I misunderstood what you said, because it looks like that is what's happening on here. And I think there was some comment I think it was in one of the engineering reports, the question was raised whether it's in working order, and it was going to be checked to make sure it does. Because obviously if you're adding more to it, and it's not going to connect properly if it's not working. Then I had a question about on the stormwater management report, it says, and this is something that, we see that the language, it seems like maybe it's like a boilerplate one. It says the service procedures associated with this plan shall be performed as required by the parties legally responsible for their maintenance. I mean, wouldn't this be the homeowner or the property owner, and shouldn't we just say that as we see on some others?
That's totally fine.
And also, I just think, the wording might confuse some people, and they might not understand that it's their responsibility to do. I think we should just say it's the property owner. And also, again, another, there's a lot of shalls in here, but the very first sentence says all stormwater components should be checked on a periodic basis. I think it should say shall, because if you don't have that shall in there, all the other shalls don't really, they don't make any sense, because if it's not being checked, then it doesn't matter that it's requiring them. I just think the language needs to be a little bit stronger.
Sure.
And that's all I had.
Okay,
I actually had a couple follow-up questions.
please.
Okay, thank you. Where's the overflow for the pool equipment?
The overflow for
Well, doesn't the filtration, I don't own a pool, so I don't know how these things work, but doesn't the pool equipment, specifically the filter and the heaters, don't they have backflow preventers that
to like drain the pool and to winterize it?
No,
Like
just
on a
to
daily-
discharge, like if the system, to flush the system, or maintenance, there's discharges on them, and they just discharge in a pipe and go someplace.
I'm not familiar
No.
with discharging of those
There's no overflow pipe for the pool, it's just the freeboard?
Yes,
Okay.
to my knowledge. I could double check with the pool company.
Okay, yeah, if you could provide a letter to Rick that there's no, well, that's question one. Question two is it feasible, based on your site plan and the design of the septic, is it feasible to relocate the pool equipment and/or the spa to where the proposed patio is? So I can appreciate that you want to park something in the corner of the setback, but as a EPC body, it's our purview to try and prevent any environmental impact to the wetland. And based on that, I'm looking for alternative places for pool equipment. And I get it, you want a spa and you want a pool. So is it feasible to to locate the spa on the opposite side of the pool and locate the pool equipment similar fashion that you have to the spa. So to the south, basically to the southwest, where you have literally labeled proposed patio elevation 12.5.
So we need to be 25 feet away from that gallery with our spa?
So the corner of the proposed pool is 25 feet from the galleries.
Exactly.
So could you put the spa, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, there's
okay.
not much room to maneuver things.
Have you considered any alternatives? Does locate the pool, locate the spa, is there 25, do you have 25 feet from the galleries elsewhere on plan?
So once you strike a line, I probably should have put it on here. If you go 25 from here and 25 from here, I think I actually have it on here. No, that's 10.
I guess the question is could you visit the spa from the patio? So the spa's on the way to the pool with the pool equipment. Or could you locate the pool? I think you could, right? Pool equipment doesn't have to be 25 feet from the galleys, correct? The septic?
Correct.
Right. So
It just
the
needs to
pool
be within
equipment,
the red line.
right, so the pool equipment doesn't have to be in the upland review area, correct?
Right, we could look at relocating the pool equipment out. I don't know what the impact is for the pool equipment being elevated in that location. I don't see it as
So we agree it's feasible.
it's feasible.
Okay, here's some suggestions for you.
Sure.
All right, I have no more comments.
Okay, anybody else?
Except I would like a follow-up on where the pool,
You talking about backwash?
yeah.
I don't think that
No.
occurs anymore.
No? Okay.
Not that I know that. We do a lot of
Well, let's
pools and I
just-
never heard of a
also-
drain for that. There's, when you do an auto cover, there's usually a drain for the auto cover because that fills up with water. So we drain the auto cover, but I never heard of anything draining pool equipment.
Okay.
But I'll double check.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
we do a
no,
ton
I
of pools.
think like the filter, no, I know, but I think the filters come under pressure. There's a backflow preventer on, they just purge, so they just dump water. And I thought engineers always have a place where, hey, we just
If they
don't
need
want
to.
it to sheet flow, it's gotta go someplace. So that was
Sure.
the, so,
I'll double check that.
yeah, thanks.
That's fine.
Okay, anybody else? Okay. I certainly haven't had a chance to review the planting plan,
Mhm.
and I think it's very important in this application. So, I'm just wondering, I'd like to get a sense of the commission, if we should ask Rick to draft a resolution pending our review of the planting plan. Okay, and obviously your question was to what was this again?
Well, I think one is to relocate the pool equipment. I don't think the pool equipment needs to be located where it is on the plan. I think there's
Okay.
feasible
So
alternatives.
you have to get back to us on that one. Yeah,
Sure.
okay.
I mean, we could look at that and see where we could put it. I mean, the nice part of, again, the aesthetic design, I know EPC aside, was that this wall acts as the backdrop and the pool equipment is screened.
Mhm.
Yes, you can put it maybe somewhere in here in between these two galleries, but now it's hanging out in the middle of the yard
Yeah.
on a pedestal in the middle of your yard. Not the most sightly thing, not in the best location, right? And I get it, there's,
Well, we don't get to decide, right? We don't get to decide where the upland review area lives, right?
completely understand.
And you
But
guys.
we're trying to balance
And you guys
multiple
try and
things.
make everything pretty, right?
We're trying to balance things.
So I get it, right?
Yeah.
So, hey, is there prudent feasible alternatives for maybe the pool doesn't, right? I didn't
Yeah, no, I get
kill
it.
you on the pool,
It's-
right? So
right.
maybe you noodle on the location of the spa and the pool equipment, some buffer between the actual pool.
Yeah, we're good with
So
that
we
in
don't
more
have
plants, I think.
manicured lawn between
Right.
the abutting wetland and the willow tree in that area.
And we want
Yeah.
to keep the willow?
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
that was nice.
All right.
A quick question about the pool equipment. It's sitting on the ground. Could you just quickly
It's not
just?
sitting on the ground,
No,
it's actually
it's on a
affixed to the
platform.
wall, so there's no impact in my mind, so.
Okay,
I mean, I can provide a detail,
so
so.
could you just briefly describe how
Sure.
it's
So
situated?
this is the wall of the pool, the backdrop. There'll
Okay,
be brackets that come off of it, and
okay.
the pool equipment sits on top of it.
Sits on top of the brackets.
Correct.
So it's not on the ground?
No,
So,
It
okay,
needs
so
to
it's
be
basically
elevated.
taking up space in the upland review area, but it's not
it's not a ground, it's not,
impacting it? Okay.
we're not pouring concrete
Right,
pad to put it in.
okay.
It's affixed to the wall,
Okay.
cantilevered off the wall, sitting on the back of this. So there's not an impact in my
So that
mind.
does make a
What
difference to
goes,
me.
what goes inside, what type of pool is it? Is it a chlorine pool, a saltwater pool?
I don't know if that's,
What type of chemicals go in the pool?
I don't know what's in the pool. I don't know if it's
Oh,
saltwater or
that's
chlorine.
a good point. I mean,
I don't believe it's a saltwater pool.
Okay.
And
Right,
Gabriel
which is
said
my
something.
point. So that's pool equipment.
right,
Okay.
It's always gonna be
to your
forward.
point,
But
if
it's
it
cantilevered
leaks or
off.
something, it's,
Yeah, we're trying to set a precedence here where we're not, look, I don't want to get off topic here, but some sites aren't suitable for pools. We've had applications where applicants have come and they're not suitable for pools. We
Right.
have applicants that have come to the commission recently who have asked for pools, who built them and haven't finished them. You see them built and you can say, yeah, that wasn't a good design. And I don't really think that we want to set a precedence for building pools in the upland review area, being close proximity to wetlands, and specifically having mechanicals in that location. And then something such as an accessory like a spa, I would strongly encourage the engineers and landscape architects to find a prudent and feasible alternative to the location of the spa. And sometimes you have to be in the upland review area, and then we look strongly at any adverse or long-term impact to that. And I'm being amendable to that. But the goal of the consultants is to get what the client wants, and we run and look, we want our fellow citizens to have what they want, but we also, our charge is to protect the
Yeah.
wetlands. And the engineer just cited that the willow tree is 10 feet from the pool. So that's very close proximity to the wetland in my eye, and it's in the upland review area. I don't want to continue to repeat myself. So I would consider, I would suggest that there would be some type of hardscape perimeter, we've discussed this before with pools specifically in the upland review area, that there would be some hardscape demarcation to prevent, and plantings to prevent manicured lawn area in the upland review area, separating the pool from the wetland, and then and looking at the site plan and locating the mechanical equipment and/or the spa further away from the upland review area. And I'm just gonna say it, this is what you guys hear time and time again, and it's time for, you gotta listen to this, and you gotta encourage your clients that, hey, look, before we take you down this long road of coming to the commission and saying, we wanna get this as close to the wetland as possible, it's your job to encourage them, hey, look, this is gonna be the home run plan. We already know what the commission feels about this, and this is what we suggest you do. If you want an aggressive application, then we can do that, but we're probably gonna have to go back and look at feasible and prudent alternatives.
Right.
I don't wanna be the bad guy.
No, understood. I mean, we typically look at feasible and prudent alternatives when we deem there's a significant impact. We don't deem there's a significant impact here by this application. So that's kind of, did we explore all options? We always do, right? We always look at, we have environmental people on our own staff. We do this day in and day out, like you said. So yes, we've explored many of options. We encourage our clients to look at many options of abandoning septic and going on sewer, right? Like, well, that's a huge cost to this project. Makes this project, like, I'm building a very small pool, very modest pool. We talk about all these elements, trust me, and then we land on something that we think we can defend and mitigate, and so in a pool and spa situation like this, where there's not many contaminants running off a pool and spa, right, in terms of stormwater and water quality. You have manicured lawn right up to the wetland there. You know, we're creating a buffer, so we're enhancing what's currently there. Could we certainly enhance the buffer more? For sure. And yeah, we could look at other options and go back to the client with, you know, all this feedback for sure, and then make a decision on how we proceed. So
think
we
that's
appreciate the input.
Okay, thank you.
What's the sense of the commission? Peter, should we keep this application open
No,
pending the,
I think we can see a way forward to start drafting a resolution, in my opinion, and then incorporate some of the ideas that Mike was mentioning, also Carolyn. I think there's a room through this that could be seen. It's my opinion.
I agree with Peter.
okay? Okay.
I mean, my only thought is, and certainly you can do it if you want to see and have the ability to comment on the planting plan and stuff, and then you want them to look at alternatives. I mean, you don't condition that away with a resolution. I think if you want to see it, then see it, and have them, you know, grant an extension and come back at the next meeting. I mean, if it was just the planting plan, I would say, yes, you can certainly sit there and ask staff to tweak it. But you've asked questions about, you know,
The location of the
location
spa.
and backwash and, you know, there's alternatives. That's the basis for your decision making. So,
So I think we should keep it open. And, you know, we'll hold the resolution for next time.
I'm good with that.
You okay?
Yep.
Okay.
so we'll generate a list of questions
Mhm.
that Andy can address, and then,
Then they'll address them, and
In a
then we'll
week
be
or
up
two, we'll
then,
come back.
and we should be okay.
And the operations and maintenance.
yep, have it all written down.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay. Next item of business is EPC 19-2024, PL 24-107, 30 Birch Road, K. Tarrant, to construct an in-ground pool patio, drainage, and other related features proximate to the wetlands. The property lies along the east side of Birch Road, approximately 300 feet south of Point of Woods Road, and is identified as map number 13, lot 34. The zone is R1, and it is approximately 0.7753 acres. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, this is a draft resolution. The application had been vetted at prior meetings in the details of the application. For those of you that had not participated, or just to pique some your memories, property does not support wetlands. Adjoining properties historically have maintained wetlands. The regulatory buffer extends into the property and affects the potential pool site. There is a pool there. They're going to demolish the existing. They have to do a great deal of drainage work. They have to relocate a pipe, but they're also doing infiltration for drainage and water quality purposes, and there was planting plans submitted, and there were recommendations how to tweak that plan, which I incorporated into the draft resolution that you directed me to generate. So the purpose this evening is to look over the resolution, see if it's consistent with what you envision for the property, and to vote.
Okay, are there questions or comments on the resolution?
No
Anybody?
comments.
I had the same issue with this resolution as I did 10 Nickerson, but I remember the discussions here on this site, and that I was fully on board with everything that this applicant had put forward. So again, I offered to get Rick's help tomorrow, open, print, and edit this resolution if it needs any editing, but recommended to proceed.
I see that you made, as two of the conditions were things that I had brought up, removing the English IV and from the stone wall, and strengthening the language in the maintenance, operations and maintenance plan, and so I'm satisfied.
Okay, Jim, may I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, for EPC number 19-2024 with respect to 32 Birch Road, that we proceed and complete the resolution.
Second the motion on 32 Birch Road related to the permit to conduct activities.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next on our business is EPC 21-2024, PL 24109, 129 Nearwater Lane, J. Metcalf, to construct a new patio, stairs, and other related features proximate to Holly Pond and other areas of resource. Property lies along the west side of Nearwater Lane, approximately 1,000 feet north of Brush Island Road, and is identified as map number 56, lot number 24. The zone is R1. It is approximately 1.925 acres. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, this item's on for discussion this evening. The project is on this waterfront property. It sits on Holly Pond, is to construct a patio, stair wall, and other related features. And again, proximate to the embayment that we know as Holly Pond. The site is already fully developed. It supports a single-family dwelling, drive, walkways, in-ground pool, dock, and other features. From a coastal perspective, it includes coastal flood hazard area, tidal wetlands, shorelands, and the estuary embayment, which is Holly Pond. It also has special flood hazard areas that affect the northern and western reaches of the site. And of course, the deepest and most turbulent floodwaters are along the edge of Holly Pond. The more ponded waters protrude somewhat landward and affect portions of the site and the dwelling. There are no inland wetlands on the property. The uplands are a Canton, Charleston, fine sandy loam. There are tidal wetlands that have been previously identified under prior applications, and those have been, the approximate locations have been noted on the plan as well. Those are generally waterward of the edge of the space, the developed space that we have on the site. There have been a number of land use applications that affected this property, ranging from docks and shoreline stabilization to residential additions that had been before the commission. And in fact, last year, zoning staff approved some landscaping along the edge of Holly Pond just as a conservation-based activity. The applicant is tasked with, it's just a brief description of the property. It is a removal of portions of an existing deck and stairs and the construction of a patio. It's about 625 square feet, 628 square feet. Patio will be comprised of crushed stone and permeable pavers to assist in mitigation of impacts, resource impacts, drainage impact, water quality impacts, and opportunities to enhance the conservation values are the tasks that the applicant has to go through in the evaluation of this application. You will note there is a site development plan, and just to get some of the facts on the record is that it currently occupies lawn grass ornament areas that are occupied by lawn grass ornamental plantings and existing deck and stair structures. The essential project elements like the patio are about 90 feet from the edge of Holly Pond, given our 100-foot setback. So it's a de minimis encroachment into the buffer. All the development is in not the V zone. It's confined to the less turbulent AE zone. Minimal impacts on grade and no expected loss of individuals or groups of trees. What was interesting, as requested by the commission, there are two very large trees in the order of 60-inch in diameter proximate to the patio. The concern being that the construction would adversely impact the trees. The applicant has gone ahead and got an arborist and did a very good arborist report on how you can construct this patio without adversely impacting the trees. And basically, it is, in the most basic description, is that you can do it. You air-spade the soil, loosen the soil. With the arborist's review and input, it's select pruning of roots. These trees can tolerate the impact of this, as opposed to taking a backhoe and just ripping the roots along those sides. They've also had recommendations to, again, he evaluated trees. It has some select pruning he had in store for these trees, as well as some treatments for some fungus on the tree that he noted on at least one of the trees, and vertical, what he called vertical mulching, which is again introducing organics to the tree itself. They often do deep root fertilization and aeration and those kinds of things to promote positive growth. The issue of drainage and water quality, the project engineer knows that given the Holly Pond, any additional runoff generated by the installation of patio will be mitigated by this elongated flow path to Holly Pond, but also by the infinite storage of stormwater in the Holly Pond and Long Island Sound itself. But they have done things to promote positive water quality, and that is they're constructing it with crushed stone and permeable pavers, and they are treating essentially the water quality volume by placing it into this area of storage. They did test holes to assess the feasibility of the system, and they provided a basic operations and management plan. They've also gained the approval of the town's peer consultant recently. It's erosion control plan. In terms of the floodplain encroachment, de minimis amounts of fill, de minimis structure. Engineer has been certified no adverse impact on flood heights, changing the dynamics of the flood, and the pavers will not are capable of standing the flood forces. I've been talking since 6 a.m. this morning. That's why. The visual and aesthetic requirements of Comm, but also the to have a positive impact on water quality, eliminate some of the manicured surface. There are 2 planting plans that are kind of in place here. There's one immediately along the patio, and the commission asked for the details. The details have been provided of basically the low-growing shrubs and perennial ground covers that are going to enhance that space, displace lawn, filter runoff, etc. What I noted to or alluded to before was the commission pointed out, well, maybe you have the opportunities to plant along the edge of Holly Pond. There was a planting plan that was approved, again, as a conservation activity by planning and zoning staff last year. That plan has been implemented, and I have correspondence from the supervising landscape professional that it was completed. Just the last thing, again, in terms of tree protection, they have provided for fencing of the trees during the construction of this, and it should be a relatively quick construction, but again, to protect the trees and the roots of those trees. They are pretty magnificent, along the rear of a magnificent property. Brian is here this evening, Brian McMahon. If you make a presentation or to answer questions, I'm available to answer questions as well.
Brian, would you like to say a few words?
Very few. Hi, my name is Brian McMahon. I'm a principal and licensed professional engineer with Redness and Mead here in Stamford. I am here tonight on behalf of Catherine and James Metcalf, owners and residents of 129 Nearwater. I'm also here tonight with Greg Sabin, who is a horticulturist and landscape designer, and he prepared both of the plans that Rick referenced to you. I was listening to Rick's summary, trying to find some gap that I might fill in, and I thought he did a great job. We have worked closely with him. And so I guess I would just ask if the commissioners have any questions.
Carolyn, planting plans.
Okay, yes, I have a couple questions. So first of all, I agree the trees are magnificent, and I did run into the homeowner, and she's very motivated to protect and to enhance the life of the trees. She did point out the plantings that were installed last year down by Holly Pond, and she was concerned, and I saw her point that they don't look like some of them don't look like they're doing that well. So I was just wondering if, I don't really know exactly what was on what those plants were. I assumed that they were chosen because of the location that they were being installed, but I was just wondering if there was maybe something that could be done to, kind of restore the health of those plants. I like the crushed stone under the permeable pavers. I think that's a nice addition, given that there's no other stormwater management on the property. I think that's a nice way to kind of keep that and cool it and so forth before it runs off. The only issue that I had, there were a lot of plants that are going in around this area, and I expressed this to the homeowner as well. They're mostly cultivars, not native plants, and she's totally amenable to changing that. She would be happy to have native plants. So that would be, again, as I'm sure you heard our earlier discussion, I just feel that when there's activity in the regulated area and we're asking the homeowner to do something to increase the conservation value of the property, I think, straight natives or true natives, the addition of those is something that can be done. And she's totally okay with that. So those are my only comments.
Jim?
I can't add to what Commissioner Bain is offering this room.
No comments.
No comments.
Okay, so I guess one of my takeaways here is the planting plan that was submitted is now stale because of the conversation you had with the homeowner, with the applicant, who wouldn't mind changing it to native plantings. Okay.
And if there's any particular questions about the plantings, I'm sure Greg could answer those, except I would say that if the commission were amenable to moving this to a resolution, I'm sure we could produce, if you would delegate that authority to Rick, in the meantime, we can produce an updated plan that would be satisfactory to the commissioners.
You okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I would suggest that we move this to resolution. Rick, if you could get the amended planting plans with native species and pass that along, just notify Carolyn, so Carolyn can, have her sharp eye on that, and to take a look at that, and then we can move this application forward. Okay, is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay,
That
great.
all works.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on, approval of minutes. We have, each commissioner should have received the minutes of August 7th, 2024, our regular meeting. Any questions or comments to that?
Add this to my list. My list is now 3.
Okay.
Oh, you couldn't open those
I
either?
couldn't.
Oh, interesting.
I'm not sure what was going on.
Anybody have anything else?
I sent something to Rick, but I'm sorry, I did not copy you on it. I'll send you a copy. It was just
It was
a
one
clear-
line.
Yeah, it was one line.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna worry about it.
That'll be fine.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes of our regular meeting of August 7th, 2024 of our Environmental Protection Commission.
And second, the regular meeting minutes, August 7th, 2024.
All in favor? Great, thank you very much. We have a continued public hearing. Do I just, okay, we have a continued public hearing of EPC 2020-24, PL 24-108, 104 Old Kings Highway North, 10 Kings Highway North, number 104 LLC, and 108 Old Kings Highway North, Old Kings Highway North, 108 LLC. We've been asked by the applicant to postpone this to our next meeting, which is what, November 6th? Which is November 6th. So anybody who's hanging around for that, sorry, but that was
I just had a
postponed.
question though on so it's a continued public hearing, we opened it, so maybe we should just vote to, for the applicant's request, continue it to November 6th?
Fine,
We vote?
fine. Jim, make the motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to continue the public hearing, which is at the applicant's request for EPC number 20-2024 with respect to 104 Old Kings Highway North and 108 Old Kings Highway North.
I'd like to second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. The next is a public hearing, EPC 2024 PL 24-126, 32 Rellingham Road, Francis Development LLC, to construct a single-family dwelling, drive, drainage, utilities, and other related features approximate to the wetlands and watercourses. Property lies along the east side of Rellingham Road, approximately 285 feet south of LaForge Road, and is identified as map number 45, lot number 87. The zone is R1 1/5, and it is approximately 0.2 acres. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, can I suggest we take just 5 minutes to kind of gather ourselves, and let me see if they're outside, the
Fine.
applicant.
Done.
That'll give Jay the 5 minutes he needs to get here.
Okay.
All good.
So bathroom break?
Yeah. Will I introduce this? Rick, you want to?
Yeah, just some, the application, and I'll introduce this, some housekeeping measures, because this is a public hearing. The commission decided at a previous meeting that the public hearing would be in the public interest, given the circumstances of the application. And the initial agenda for the September 10th meeting, when it was accepted, was posted on the land records. The application was accepted at September 10th special meeting. And again, the commission decided a public hearing on the matter based on determination that would be in the public interest. Applicant was noticed of the acceptance and the schedule of the public hearing on September 11th. That was our Section 9 letter that outlined the requirements of a public hearing. The hearing was scheduled for this evening. Other important elements, at least from a housekeeping perspective, was that we provided a list of additional information based on our review and the comments from the commission on September 16th. Notice of the public hearing was published in the Darien Times by the commission staff on September 26th and October 3rd in accordance with the requirements. The adjoining properties were given notice in accordance with the requirements with a certified mailing receipt. And I believe those were dated September 25th. Additional information had been provided by the applicant in response to our request dated September 27th. The notice of this agenda was posted on the land records on October 3rd. Our agenda summary report was posted online on October 3rd. It is important to note that all the plans, reports, and other pertinent data subject to this publication are listed in the agenda summary report that you had been provided. We further reference all plans, reports, and other data maintained in our file under 23-2024. That's for 32 Rellingham Road for Francis Development. And that file is dated September of 2024. Included in that file is my personal resume that outlines my expertise and experience over the last 40 years or so. I I did start as a child. I think I was 4.
I tried to whistle.
Just for the record, in the agenda summary, you have the initial, listing of the initial submittals and the revisions that are before the commission. The application itself is to demolish the existing structures that are on this property, a dwelling and detached garage, and construct a new single-family dwelling, drive, drainage, utilities, and other related features proximate to wetlands and watercourses. So as you noted, the property lies along the east side of Relihan Road, about 300 feet south of La Forge, and you've outlined the information that is critical to the identification as listed in the assessor's office. Property currently supports a single-family dwelling, detached garage, driveway, walkways, and other related features. It's currently served by both public water and sanitary sewers. The site is generally characterized by the presence of gently sloping developed uplands and a few small to moderate sized trees. Those trees are generally along the very edge of the perimeter, and perhaps even most of them are on the adjoining properties. Soils report was generated for this particular site. There are no inland wetlands on this property. However, the uplands have been identified and classified as Dorthens. There is an intermittent watercourse on the property to the east. There is at least a reported intermittent watercourse and wetlands on the property to the north. By virtue of the fact of our 50-foot upland regulatory buffer, it protrudes onto this site, and portions of the development is therefore subject to our regulation. Property is not in a flood hazard zone. Very important to identify that too. So the development that's currently being proposed necessitates the construction and implementation of a new expanded underground utilities, subsurface drainage, driveway, walkway, patio grading, and other related features. The applicant is tasked with demonstrating the absence of impact on resources, regulated areas and resources, looks at drainage, water quality, and opportunities to enhance the overall conservation values of the regulated areas and the property. And as always, we're always looking at, is there opportunities and alternatives that's going to diminish the encroachment or negative effects. Project engineer has developed a site development plan. Again, just for the record, no direct wetland impacts on wetlands and watercourses. The existing space generally comprised of existing developed, although it's coarsely kept, developed spaces, including buildings, drives, walkways, very overgrown landscapes if you've been there, and other related features. Grade change that's being proposed with the applicant is pretty well confined to the low range. With cuts and fills, generally it looks to be in 1 to 2 feet. I don't have because of the offsite, I was currently waiting at this time about the area of upland review area, so they can expand on that at this evening's hearing. Project engineer looked at drainage and water quality, and the redevelopment of the site will result in about 675 square feet of additional imperviousness, and the applicant has chosen to manage that by creating post-construction watersheds and using structured drainage to mitigate any potential increase in the peak rate of runoff. So the two systems, there's one to the back, one to the front. They're maintaining the existing drainage patterns, and by constructing the banks of infiltrators they were proposing, I think it's 2 banks of 6, the applicant was able to demonstrate that there'd be no adverse impact on drainage and adjoining properties as a result of this development, for all the storms between, and that's where the peak rate of runoff for the storms are ranging from 2 to 50 years in intensity. There's also this dwelling will have a basement, and the applicant was asked to at least address what the potential impacts are as a result of a basement and possible dewatering. It's been reported that test holes in the vicinity of the dwelling did not reflect groundwater affecting the basement. However, there is a system that is currently being proposed with I think it's a bank of 2 infiltrators that will take a precautionary sump pump. The plans and reports were sent to the town's peer review consultant, who is actually here this evening too. And there was a number of items that remain open, but may be considered to be de minimis, having to do with the location of observation port and those kinds of things. But I'll let them discuss those items. Again, system of water quality, there was an erosion control plan provided. Any of the drainage collection structures have deep sumps and bell traps and other kind of first level types of features that allow you to collect the more gross solids. They're utilizing infiltration to cool and treat runoff, and the new structure will be reconnected to the sanitary sewer. The applicant has, to displace some of those manicured surfaces, they have proposed a planting mitigation plan that provides for the removal of, although it's not clearly defined how, invasive non-natives and introduction of several trees and shrubs in a buffer. The applicant is present tonight, and the town's consulting engineer is present this evening. And also this morning I sent to you, we've had discussions with some of the abutters who have expressed their concern about drainage, and have provided, I sent it along to you, and I think you at least got some of them, videos showing, in storms of magnitude, what they experience on their property. And they're, I believe, mostly to the east of this site. So I'm available for questions. The applicant's here to make a presentation. I note that the abutters are here this evening as well to express their concerns, and we can move from there.
Okay, just a point of order. The applicant's going to have a chance to speak here now and present his plan. The commission members are going to have their chance to ask their questions and comments and have the applicant respond. And then I will open up to the rest of the, and then I'll have Joe come up and make his comments, and the applicant will be able to respond. And then I'll get to the members of the public, okay? And then you'll have, as much chance as you need to speak. Okay, so that'll be sort of the order of business here. So is the representative for the applicant?
Here.
Right here.
For the record, Jay.
Is there any way you could get up there and speak?
Sure.
Because the microphones are up there, that's the reason.
Okay. For the record, Jay Fain from Jay Fain and Associates, Environmental Consulting Services. Just a little bit of my background. I'm a professional soil scientist. I'm a certified professional in erosion and sediment control. I'm a certified ecological restoration practitioner. I've been in business and practicing for approximately 40 years. So Rick and I are about to start at the same young age together. With me here tonight is Brian Muller, our professional engineer, and also Victoria Landau from my office, who's the landscape architect who prepared the planting plan, the restoration plan. Happy to go over as much as you want, but Rick really did a very good job
summarize the application. I don't want to repeat everything. I just want to make a couple of salient points. The wetland in question is a watercourse that traverses the rear of the property here. It's an intermittent watercourse. It's an intermittent watercourse because it flows more than a single storm event, and it has defined banks and channel. It has evidence of scour and erosion. Really, no wetland vegetation that I noticed. It's mostly lawn, and there's invasive species, not weed, associated with it. The location is approximate that I use from town GIS maps because it's off the site. I did want to address, and Rick and I had some discussion about the water course feature on the 30 Relihan property. I looked at that when I did my original delineation. It's obviously altered. I could not make a determination when I was on the property looking at it. There was no water course feature that I could tell. Also, I can't tell from off-site if there's wetland soils, but did not appear, this area did appear to be disturbed. There is riprap placed in here, a lot of invasive type species, so I wasn't able to make a determination from the information I had from off-site whether it's a regulated area or not. I did notice that it was on your town GIS mapping, and I did go to the 30 Relihan file for it. It's interesting. It's shown as a regulated wetland and water course, but when I went and I looked at it closely, there's no soil scientist report on file. There's no evidence of who determined or how they determined what this was a regulated area on this particular piece of property.
Jay?
Yes.
Excuse me, when I walked there was a head wall, there was a pipe. It looked like it was, most of the water was coming out of a pipe.
There's definitely drainage easement over here, and there's definitely drainage that comes across here, and I think that's the original source of the water here. And I don't think there's any dispute that it's a drainage course. And I don't even know there's a dispute that it's regulated area. I'm just telling you that I, as a professional, can't make that determination.
Okay.
I don't have enough information. And I did try, based on the information that I could ascertain, and I could not find an original soils report or anything that a professional had done that. So I feel that I can't make the determination, say this is a water course. I feel the record needs to be accurately reflect the findings that I find, and so I think it's up to the commission to make the determination whether this is a wetland or a water course. It does not make a difference.
Yeah,
Irregardless, we're not going to have an impact on this area here. But I'm a stickler for doing things the correct way. I want to have the record the right way in case there's any appeal or anything else. So I said, you know, Rick and I had a discussion about this, a little heated, but I said, let you guys make the decision. That's the right way it should be. That's the way the evidence, these hearings were designed to be. I'm fine with it. Once you make a determination, we'll add it back to the plan. As I said, we're not going to have any impact on it anyways, and I felt, you know, the findings that pertain to the 30 Relihan thing that allowed this house to be built should be also applied to this, because we're even farther away and we're going to have less impact.
Did you test the western boundary for soil along that?
I tested this up again. This is always what Rick calls door fence, what I call HGM, human transpirated material. Now that's kind of the updated thing. It's all fill in here. And that was fairly obvious. The primary function of both these systems is stormwater conveyance. There's no real wildlife habitat value. There's no water renovation value because the water's just moving too fast through here. I'm going to let Brian talk a little bit more about how our drainage system is designed and how that's going to renovate and improve the stormwater quality over the existing condition. But I just want to touch on that. I did, you know, and being our philosophy is always to give back. We should always improve the situation. So we did include a planting here with, we used originally the green giant arborvitae. The reason, we've been doing this for 40 years. We've tried everything. We tried every native conifer that we can. They don't make it anymore. the hemlocks and the white pines just can't do it anymore. So we don't, we want to have the successful planting. We've had great luck with the green giant arborvitae. It's deer resistant, it's disease resistant. You can't kill them with drought. So that's why we used it. It does provide cover for animals. Doesn't have any food value, but does provide cover, just similar to other evergreens. We got a comment, could we use something more closer to a native? We could use, we could use whatever you want, but I just giving you our experience. We did revise the plan and put Norway spruces here. They're not native either, but they've become indigenous. It's common, but we can have a discussion on that. We're not wed to anything, but we felt that was appropriate to have some type of evergreen buffer here, and then we use native, what was it, the cleffer and along the front here. I'm going to stop, unless you have any questions for me now, I'm going to stop down with Brian, because I think this would really a lot about drainage. I think you should need to have a detailed discussion on the drainage and how that's going to be improved. And then we can digress back to any questions you have for me later on. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Brian Muller with Muller Engineering. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut. We analyzed this site under the most current drainage regulations for the town of Darien, which is the fresh meadow approach. So as Rick, Mr. Telemelli mentioned, that we're increasing the impervious area on this site by approximately 700 square feet. I'm not going to say 673. It's 700 square feet. At 27 square feet is de minimis. It's one of Rick's favorite words, I think, these days. But the fresh meadow approach is really a great approach. Most towns don't have that regulation, actually, besides Westport. I think that's the only other town that makes you do a fresh meadow approach. And I think it's a good way to, as an engineer, my vocabulary is limited, I'm good with math, but it's a good way to make up for lost time. In the past, we never required drainage systems, so by doing the fresh meadow approach, we don't take credit for those old impervious structures and paved driveways and patios and stuff. So we're kind of making up for lost time. So by that regulation, I had to analyze the site as if it was grass, not any impervious surface. And still with the drainage structures and improvements we're making, we're reducing volumes and peak flows through the 100-year storm event. And I wanted to do that specifically here because of this intermittent watercourse. When we were out there testing, as Jay mentioned, it was hard to determine over here because when you look to that side, to the north property there of 30, all you see is riprap. You see a bunch of riprap thrown in there, and I think somebody probably did that after this permit was granted and the CO was granted to help sediment and erosion because I'm sure this pipe flows water. I saw the videos, so it's definitely some type of conveyance for a large watershed that rips water through here when we get those 6 inches rainstorms in a couple hours, which is a big problem these days. As you saw in North Carolina recently, they got 30 inches of rain. It just literally towns were gone. And that's sadly the storm events we're coming up with now. So eventually I think the peak flow models that we run are going to change for more intense storms. Right now we run it over a 24-hour period. And a 25-year storm event for the town of Darien, 6.4 inches in 24 hours. So when you get 6 inches in 3, 4, 5 hours, I mean, that's a lot of water. And this year we've had a couple of those storms. In certain areas, it's amazing. You'll get 4 inches in Greenwich, you'll get 10 in Darien. You might get, I know New Canaan and Westport got hit hard this year. And so did upstate Connecticut. And those storms, we try to design for as well. I try to think about that. So the Coltex on this site, we have a bank, as Rick mentioned, of 6 in the front and 6 in the back because the property was kind of filled in over the years with the development that was there. So it created a mound in the middle and a watershed to either side, and then also minor watersheds to the north and south as well. So what we have right now is just 2 Coltex systems, one in the front, one in the back. The front one takes the driveway, and the back one takes the back portion of the house. So the majority of the house goes into the back, and the whole driveway goes into the trench drain here. So we'll capture the whole driveway. There's curbing on the driveway. And then we did, just as a precautionary thing, because when we dug test holes, we didn't witness any water, any actual groundwater in the holes.
You didn't witness, how deep did you go?
We went about 9 feet, actually, in the test hole. I think I only recorded like 7 feet down because the basement's only 5 feet into grade. We also tried to We also tried to keep the first floor as elevated as we could, so we only had to excavate 5 feet.
Are you putting mechanicals down there?
Not that I know of.
Yeah,
Not
the
that I
basement,
know
no?
of. Not that I know they're putting mechanicals down there. I'm
So
sure.
what's gonna be down there? then?
I'm sure they'll have a hot water heater down there. I'm sure that's probably where they're gonna put it. That's where I would put it if I was building the house. But I didn't see a labeled mechanical room on the foundation plan. It was just a basic foundation plan, open floor plan down there in the basement.
Since you have it, you have, sump pumps and et cetera, because.
Yeah, there'll be a sump pump inside the basement, so it'll be different than 30, where they have 2 exterior pumps, and also 2 on 30, those exterior pumps just go to a level spreader, so there's no real storage there. So when those pumps go off, they're basically just gonna flow right into this intermittent water course. We have 2 330 Coltech systems there that'll store, 100 cubic feet of water each. And also provide infiltration, which is another thing in our drainage model we don't account for. I don't even know I know town of Westport allows us to account for it, but I still don't in their models, and the town engineer loves me because he's like, this is an easy review, I don't have to argue with you about the infiltration rate, which is one of the biggest arguments private engineers and town engineers have, which is what's the infiltration rate? I didn't witness your perk test, are you really telling me it's gonna drain 3 inches in an hour? And anyone can go out and do a perk test and test a different area, especially on a filled soil site, and you'll get a different perk rate. So I don't like to use them. Number one, I don't trust the rates, and number two, what if it rains and the ground's fully saturated, and then it rains again? So that kind of eliminates that idea. So these are all designed as closed storage. They're not infiltrating at all. So when we run the model, they fill up and then they overflow. And even with them filling up and overflowing in the models, we're still reducing peak flows and volumes of water coming off this property without accounting for that existing impervious surface on the site, which isn't minimal either. There's, there was a big detached garage about 6 feet off the back property line. The driveway went all the way back there. All this water basically from the high point right across the middle here, all this water went untreated down here into the wetland area in the back. So now it's all going to be treated. Some of there were minor comments from the outside reviewer, Joe. Is actually probably some of the best comments I think I've ever had. The first comment is prepare a stormwater maintenance and operations plan. And I think that comment was because he probably reviewed the first set of plans. On the second set, we have the operation and maintenance plan right here. If he wants a different type, we could do that. I do, paper 8.5 by 11 documents that I like to give the homeowner because after the house is built, these maps are gone. So a little packet goes a long way. I can also provide a packet for environmentally friendly lawn care too. We do that in some towns to help tell homeowners how you can treat your lawn and get a green grass without putting, Roundup on it. One of the other comments was asking me if I investigated this easement to make sure that there was no pipes that cross underneath the property, and we did. We dug test holes, right here in the line of it. We also looked at it, and it's very obvious there's a pipe that comes out. My assumption is during the process of this subdivision, they tried to run a pipe through here, and someone cheaped out and said, let's just pop it out right here and let it rip. So, and back when this subdivision was done, that was probably normal practice. We also didn't have heavy, intense rains back then either. And then one of the other comments was just bringing up the groundwater thing and the sump pumps, and it says no response is required. And then the last comment was, provide inspection ports on the Coltex, and yeah, I definitely need to do that because that's an important aspect of maintaining the Coltex system. Usually I'm pretty good about that. That one slipped by me this time. So we will add those, and hopefully that addresses his comments. If there's any additional, we'll address those too. Are there any questions?
Any questions or comments from the commissioner?
I think Mr. Mueller is one of the most candid engineers we have that comes before the commission, and especially you get the impression that he reads Joe Canis's comments before the meeting actually takes place. No, I thought that the location of the Coltex and the stormwater retention was very simple and thoughtful. I like to see in the upland review area that the house has to have mechanicals. It's got very small setbacks on the side of the house, so the AC units are tucked up tight to the home. Every house needs a patio, so, there's no pool that they're asking for. And another thing is because it is close to the watercourse, with the location of the Coltex, right? So you have the patio, so you have the house, the patio, and then you have the Coltex. There's no room to put anything in the backyard after this CO is closed. So no, there's no room to put anything else after they're done. They located the stockpile, where they're gonna put the stockpile.
I could move that too.
No, I mean,
Like to the other side.
you just located a stockpile. We generally have to ask people to do that. I did have a question though. So at the home, you have an elevation of 100.9, and at the street, you have an elevation of 100.8. Is that enough for a 2% pitch for the drive?
Yeah, so the drive is
Or
very.
the level spreader is at 100.9? Or is that the level spreader?
no, the trench drain.
The trench drain is at 100.9, and
Yeah,
then
the
the house.
driveway is very flat. I've actually discussed with the homeowner about making it a porous asphalt driveway or some type of porous material as just an additional measure. But I wasn't gonna include that in my drainage model because I don't need to. But that's something we talked about already that he might implement, just because with the driveway pitched so minimally, he will get ponding. I don't know an asphalt guy that'll pitch it that perfectly. You'll always get some ponding, which then his driveway will, really degrade quickly. Instead of a 15-year driveway, it'll probably have a 5-year driveway. But that's something this owner has actually done in the past. I've worked with him in the past. We've done a lot of porous asphalt driveways, porous gravel paved 2 driveways, paver driveways, a mix of the group of 3. They'll do sometimes they'll do the parking spot as pavers, and then, an apron in front as some pavers, and then, the rest porous asphalt or a gravel. And when we do a gravel driveway, we do it with, if you Google gravel pave 2, and 2 is just the number 2, and pave is just PAV. If you Google that, they'll give you all these, it's like a newfound design. So it's not like you're going down to Jersey Shore and you're driving a gravel driveway and you see all the tire ruts, right? It puts down this hexagonal structural piece in the top 4 inches of gravel that allows it to give it a structural aspect to the gravel so that you can actually plow it and not make a mess, and not plow gravel all over the place and have a large cleanup. And that's actually implemented at the town of Greenwich. If you do a gravel driveway, you have to do that. Because a lot of people have come and said, and in Stanford too, they say, oh, we'll just do a gravel driveway. And Rick knows this. Susan, the town engineer there, used to let people get away with the gravel driveway and say, oh, you can use a CN value coefficient, a runoff of 80 instead of 98, which is asphalt, and it helps in the drainage model. But then quickly she caught on that once people got a CO, they would just pave the driveway because you don't need a permit to do that. They just pave it. So that's why now we call gravel, and most driveway surfaces, whether it's grass paved, gravel paved, we just do a 98 CN, just because we don't know what the owners are going to do in the future. They're also harder to maintain, so that's why I don't like to use it in my drainage models if I don't have to, because if they don't maintain this properly and it stops functioning in 10 years, and it's harder to maintain, then the increase in runoff is going to change. The Coltex are an easy chamber. You have easy inspection ports that I'm going to add. It allows good inspections. It allows me with the junction boxes to come and look at any given time, because the way I have the pipe set, the outlet from the junction box to the Coltec and the pipe to the Coltec are level. So as the Coltec fills with water, so does the bottom of the junction box. So when you look in the junction box, there's a foot of water in there. There's a foot of water in the Coltex then too. So I get a lot of comments from builders saying, hey, don't you want pitch on that pipe? And I say, no, I want them dead flat, because then when I look in the junction box, I know exactly what's in the Coltex. And I'm weird like that. I like to go look at these things after big rains and see how much water is sitting in these Coltex. And I do it more with sump pumps, especially in the town of Greenwich. We do nice deep basements with golf simulators and things like that. And these pumps run all the time. And I go and look at these things just to get an idea of how I can design them better the next time. Because every time I keep increasing the size of them, and I keep seeing a lot of water in them, and they're not infiltrating as fast as I would have thought. Even though I don't account for infiltration, I still like to see it. So
could you change, how much, so to get like a 2% pitch on the drive, what would you?
raise the garage slab elevation. elevation.
What would you have to do, yeah?
Yeah, so basically what I would do is I'd raise the garage slab elevation probably half a foot. The reason why I didn't is because the existing spot elevations along the side property line are about 100.6. And I didn't want to raise the driveway so much and have a heavy slope down to the next property. I tried to use the grades on the property. Same with this side. I didn't want to do any grading here, so we kind of just let the existing grades go in. So there should be very minimal disturbance over here.
What's the grade now?
The grade over here is 99.
No, the percentage, 1%?
Yeah, it's about 1%. It's about 1% to the trench drain here, yeah. And there was actually a high point in the existing lot here of 101 that we're gonna cut out and bring everything nice and flat to the road there.
So it's certainly a benefit to the abutting neighbors because you haven't increased the grade.
Oh, yeah, and I purposely did that because I know there's specific rules on grading near the property lines in town. The original design of this actually had the house further forward with no parking spot here. But when we spoke with zoning, and I didn't know this until now, but there's a code apparently that you have to provide at least a 2-car garage or an additional parking spot. And they wouldn't let me count the parking spot here as an additional parking spot because it's within the setback. So we had to provide a parking spot inside the setback so that 2 cars could park inside the setback, which I thought was an interesting regulation. So that's how we came up with what we came up with. Originally, we had this whole thing forward another 10 feet, but we added that spot in there.
And then my last question is just like now I know you engineers design everything. Would it be belt and suspender if you took the front left gutter leader, and fed it if you took, I don't know, if you just put 2 more Coltex where the driveway Coltex are, and that would take, I don't know if that would be, it's just a question if that would be meaningful or not. I know just for the commissioners, Mr. Devanzo, if we ever looked at all of his plans when he was presenting applications, that obviously we were looking at applications that had upland review area review. He would always like grab a corner of the building and just put 2 Coltex to take some additional runoff that would just, is like the nice to have. So that's my question is it prudent or is it just a nice to have, is it eyewash?
So if I was to remove something, this leader from going back here and putting a little Coltec unit here, we could do that. I don't know what the impacts would be because the overflow of this Coltec would go to the road. So that would change the amount of water in this front watershed versus the back watershed. So it depends site by site basis. So if one of his jobs, and I know on his jobs too, he will sometimes have a separate sheet which will show like the roof pitches and which sections go where. On this house, it's a basic roof, so it's like half and half. But we tried to maintain the amount of impervious or amount of water flowing in the back as the same as the front. And by doing that, we had to put the whole house to the back because the driveway was so large. I couldn't pipe enough driveway I couldn't make this big enough because I still have to run utilities through here. And I don't like running utilities underneath Coltex.
Well, here's another point, sorry, just forget that I even asked the question, is that's the area where the abutting neighbor has the scour from the pipe, so you don't necessarily want to add more water. You're doing them a favor by not adding infiltration in that front yard area.
Yeah, exactly. I was trying to maintain a natural grade over here as well, even though it is deemed as fill by the soil scientists. It was still placed there 50 years ago, so to me now it's natural, it's older than me. But I did think that I could always shift these Coltex over too to eliminate any excavation as close to this wetland area as possible. But I like to keep a 10-foot separation between different Coltex systems because they tend to mix. And if one is groundwater and one is stormwater, you like to keep those separate. And that actually gives me another idea. So a lot of people are always worried about sump pumps and the impacts on brooks and watercourses and town pipes and things, right? So in a normal situation, when you're actually pumping groundwater, usually your sump pump should go off days after the storm because it takes time for that rainwater to absorb down into that groundwater level. If your sump pumps, and I tell people this all the time because I get calls all the time after a big rain, hey, I got 3 feet of water in my basement, it's never happened before, blah, blah, blah. Or my sump pumps are going off all night last night during the rain. And usually what I tell people is if that's happening and your sump pumps are going off more than normal during a rain event, you have problems around your foundation, where you're getting stormwater that's infiltrating down into your footing drains faster than it should. And most of the time that's either by somebody's patio that's been sat there for long enough and it settles along the foundation and it's back pitched a little bit, or you get some puddling, or your gutters are clogged and they're all overflowing off the gutter and they're falling right next to the foundation, adding water that goes right down next to the foundation down into your footing drains. So a lot of times a normal groundwater system with a pump should be pumping a day or two after the rain event, which in normal situations, after this intermittent watercourse flows like crazy during a 6-inch rainstorm, the pump shouldn't really kick on until the next day when this water's already starting to recede. So typically, I've actually had arguments with DEP when I did work along the Delaware River. Delaware River peaks like 5 days after a rain event in certain areas. So they actually let us just provide water quality storage so that we could get the water out before the flooding actually happened to the peak of the river. So I thought that was interesting because we provided a lot of storage and he said, no, I only want you to provide this much. And he explained that to me and it makes a lot of sense. You want to get the water out to the river, down to the ocean before it peaks because you're just then affecting that flow, right? So it's kind of the same thing with sump pumps. Like, unfortunately, a lot of people don't monitor their gutters enough, and myself included, because I try to do it myself. And I always wait until the end of fall. Like right now, my gutters are probably a little clogged, but I'm going to wait until all the leaves fall. You know, but that, and I don't have a basement in my house because I'm a drainage engineer, so I wouldn't buy a house with a basement. I also live on top of a hill too. But that's the gist of how I came up with the design for this and the thoughts involved there. So.
Michael, anything more?
No.
So I guess it's not feeling intuitive to me, so you can educate me on this.
Okay.
I'm kind of looking at this and I'm seeing the north, if this is the upper left-hand corner, as being the wet area on this property, just based upon topography. Is that an accurate statement?
You know, when I was out there, it was late August, so it was really dry.
Yeah.
The wet area on this property?
So maybe I'll hold my
It's the
questions
lowest topology.
until
Oh,
we,
the lowest.
maybe I'll hold my
Because
questions.
the soils are, I mean, it's a lot of fill there, and it's, all the soils I would call well drained. There's no wet area per
There's
se.
no
on
wet
this
spot
property.
there.
Yeah, I'm just based
That
on,
is the lowest area though. That's
that's
where
what
the
I'm
majority,
looking at,
yeah.
and I'm looking at
Yes.
so maybe I'll hold my questions until the neighbors testify on where they're seeing this
Yes,
water
we can
flow.
answer those questions. Yeah,
Yep.
so on this survey, basically, when this water flows down here, it all just flew right there. It didn't go this way, it didn't go along
Yeah,
the
well,
garage.
that's
It
how
went-
I would see it. So if that's the case, then why is the big cul-de-sac on the right side and the small one on the left side? And why is your drain is not at the low point? So I'm gonna hold those questions until we have the neighbor talk about what
Okay.
they see.
Yeah. I can answer that really quick.
Sure.
So the reason why we wanted the Coltex, at least the one that I think will overflow during a rain event,
Yep.
as far from this low area as possible, is because then when it overflows from this standpipe, it gives it more chance to flow over land in a sheet flow manner.
Okay.
And ideally, that gives it one last chance to try to infiltrate the ground. It also will slow it down. If I put this right over here, then immediately the water that overflowed out of there, if it ever did, would then be right in there, right in that watercourse with that, you know, heavy flow potentially, depending on the rain event. So the further away I can get from a point of concern, the better. It allows the water to sheet flow over land. Just like when if you have a steep property and once that water hits that top ridge, it's gonna start to rip down the hill. You can actually extend the time of concentration by leveling it out and building a wall, and you'll actually reduce the flow of water to that bottom of the hill by leveling it out, because then it flows over a smaller pitch and it takes more time for it to hit that point of concern. I don't know if
Okay,
that
I
makes sense.
might go through that again another
That's
time.
fine, that's fine. I'm gonna go through it
Okay,
again.
I'll pass it on.
This is the most informative presentation I've heard in many, many moons on this commission from all of the presenters. Michael's good questions. I have nothing to add. I'm thrilled with the education I'm getting tonight.
I apologize for asking you to repeat, but could you just repeat? I was looking for a document here, and I kind of tuned in as you were talking, but I missed what you said initially. But the driveway is constructed of?
Asphalt, as of right
It is
now, it's just a normal asphalt driveway.
Because you were talking about the stone driveways.
Yeah. Yeah,
so-
knowing this builder, it could change over time.
Well,
They
I
build it, and then they're gonna list it, and depending on the new homeowner, the person that's maybe interested in it, they may want a different type of surface treatment. And I've recommended to this builder that he should consider a porous material on the surface of the driveway.
Right,
because of the pitch of it.
Yeah, because I also noticed that it was stated that you're trying to create it with a low impact development guidelines. So I thought, maybe the driveway would be something other than asphalt. What about the pavers though? Is there any room maybe for the back patio, are there any permeable pavers there, or?
That's another potential option that we could add.
I mean, again,
Site
if
plan
low
too, yeah.
impact development
Mhm.
is, an objective, I
Yeah.
mean, that would be something that
The only thing I would add on that is, the permeable pavers aren't the best for patio surface because chairs and stuff off. I prefer to do like bluestone, a little bit wider joints and stone dust, and that basically is permeable, but it's much more user friendly.
Okay,
And most of
okay.
the time, the most important aspect of a permeable surface is what's beneath it.
Yeah.
So you could do a permeable surface and just have it sitting on dirt.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
not gonna do much, but
Yeah.
if you have a gravel base beneath it.
Right, like the application we just
Yeah,
discussed.
yeah, if
Right.
you do a gravel base beneath it, I usually recommend, and actually, if you do run the calculation, if you do a foot of stone underneath any impermeable surface or permeable surface, it actually stores a 25-year storm with the 40% void
Yeah.
ratio.
So in this case, what is the patio?
I think the patio in this case is a bluestone. But again, like Mr. Fang just said, you could do the bluestone with a certain joint that's not a cemented joint, and that would allow it to be more permeable.
Okay, put it on you can put a stone base and then put a choker course and then put stone dust and lay it, and it works really well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like if low impact development is one of the
It's what you-
objectives.
Yeah.
It's what we usually recommend, this isn't this is a modest house, and that's a good surface for it. And we would definitely recommend that.
Every little bit helps though,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Oh, yeah,
why-
it'll also help
All working
the
together.
homeowner too.
Right.
You know, I get a lot of calls too about soggy yards after it rains, like, hey, my kids wanna go out and play in the yard soggy.
Right.
Well, permeable surfaces around your yard will help dry your yard out after a rain event. It'll help infiltrate the water over the lawn surface better.
Yeah, okay, that's great, thank you. And I appreciate your being willing to change the operations and maintenance plan.
Yeah,
Because again,
yeah.
I see that it's one of those boilerplate ones that, talks about the service procedure shall be performed as required by the parties legally responsible for their maintenance. It should be the property owner. And also, should be a little bit stronger language. The frequency, you should change should to shall be, and then it will all just be consistent. Now, you have a separate detention system for the sump pump, and you mentioned that, I thought that I had read that the soil test that you ran into groundwater at 48 inches and 50 inches, but did I understand you to say 9 feet?
No, yeah, we didn't run into any groundwater or mottling. I only read down to 74 feet, because once we got below that, it was just basically bank run.
Okay, I don't know why, it says, it must have been on, it must have been on one set of plans. It said soil test pit data. That was, and this was from January of 2017, 13th, 2017.
Oh, no, that's probably...
It might have been on the.
That's the 30
That's
property.
30 row, yeah.
The
Yeah,
neighbors.
that's 30 really.
Oh, those are the neighbor, okay.
Yeah, from 2017, yeah.
All right, so there is a full basement, right, correct?
Yes,
And it's how tall is the basement, deep?
Let's see here.
8 feet.
Yeah, it's like 8.5 feet.
And so getting back to the sump pumps, is there a sump pump in the, I know the house is kind of.
It'll be inside the basement,
Uh-huh.
which will be different from the neighbors. So the neighbors, they actually have a detail here on this plan on file. It actually shows the sump pump to be 2 feet below the bottom of the footing,
Oh.
which is very deep.
Yeah,
A lot of times, I actually have, when we do these types of designs with that exterior sump pumps, I actually usually have contractors put those in as soon as the foundation goes in the ground, so I can monitor the level of the pump, and we can adjust it based on how
Yeah.
much it's pumping.
right,
Because honestly, by raising it 6 inches, you
It'll
might
pump a lot
pump
less.
half the time.
yeah, yeah,
And you're still 1.5 feet below your footings.
right.
You don't need to be that low. You only need to be 1 foot below your footing, really. So that could be something that could always be adjusted on properties in the future.
So just out of curiosity, if you're not, I mean, if you're recalibrating the sump pump to sort of minimize how often it's running, why have separate detention for it?
I don't like to mix stormwater and groundwater,
Oh,
because sometimes the
okay.
groundwater will be pumping at a different time. And if, let's say you get a big rain event, and 2 days later, your water's all down into the footings, and it's starting to pump a lot, and then it starts to rain again. You don't want the pump to be pumping into a system that's also gonna take rainwater, because it'll already be full. So I like to keep them separate, and I like to keep them a good 10 feet apart.
Okay,
Generally, if I get them closer, I'll use like a poly liner to separate the water from infiltrating horizontally to each other. It'll force it down, but those poly liners are expensive.
oh, okay,
Yeah, it's like the roofing material you put underneath shingles. Same, it's like a 30 mil thick
right.
poly liner, yeah.
And I also appreciate your willingness to give the homeowner a packet for, you know, organic lawn care,
Yeah.
land care, excuse me. Just because I feel that, you know, whether they hire someone or they do it themselves, you know, a lot of times people just, they move from the city or, you know, they just don't know. You know, they're maybe first-time homeowners and they want, you know, if they know that it makes a difference to do it this way, I think, you know, anything to kind of encourage them to do it, I think that's a good idea, and I would suggest that you do that. Also, with regard to the invasive species, it says that they're going to remove the invasive species prior to implementing the buffer planting plan. It doesn't say how they're going to be removed, but I mean, you've heard us all evening, you know, I would not want to see, you know, synthetic chemicals. I think, you know, I did go to the property, I visited the property, you could barely get on it. I mean, it's so overrun with, I mean, I really didn't even know where to step. You know, I just would really
it's
not
like
want to
Cambodia
see,
over there.
I would want to see
So,
everything done by hand.
Yeah, I hear you, and there's different philosophies on that. You know, there's always, that's what my expertise, and that's what my passion is invasive species control and removal and environmental restoration. So I don't want to get into the whole spiel, but we can do mechanical here. The only issue with mechanical is you can't just take it and dump it because you're taking all the thing. Yeah, so you have to be careful. So we'll have to address that
Right.
during the process. But basically, there's nothing there we're saving. We'll just
Yeah.
scour, take everything away, and then bring new soil in. The only problem is there are absolutely invasive species on the surrounding properties, and if you know anything about them, we're going to be challenged with them in the future. We can't go on the neighboring property.
Right, and I mean, you know, some of them, you know, I don't know exactly which ones are there right now.
But the worst one is the knotweed. We have
Yeah,
knotweed.
it's
And that's just nasty.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
you know, we'll take it whatever we can on our property. You know, we'll encourage the neighbors to take theirs away.
Yeah, again, I was gonna say similarly with, you know, giving homeowners a plan or a suggestion to practice organic land care. I mean, maybe if you give the neighbors some literature about the invasive, they would be willing to.
Yeah, and we usually, you know, like I said, we try to use a native species. I'd like to get your impact on that. You know, we always, wherever we can, we use pollinator plants and native species, and we don't even just use natives. We use the native genotype, not the cultivars.
Right, the straight natives,
And
right.
then we use for the lawn. We don't never use bluegrass lawns anymore. We use only the tall fescue grasses. It's low everything, low water, low maintenance, low you don't really need, once they're established, you don't need to do much to them at all.
So that's a native seed?
Yeah, it is, it's a native grass, it's tall fescue, it's a clumping grass. I can give you information about it if you want, but it's so much better than like the other grasses. It's tolerant of, compaction and everything else, so we always make sure that, and we always encourage everybody to use that. You should, if you're gonna have lawn, that's the seed that you should be using, and we can give you some more information on that.
Yeah, no, I'd like to read more about that. And yeah, about the suggested plantings, the wetland restoration plan. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the green giant because they're not native. They're not native.
We hear you, and we just don't, we can't use the hemlocks anymore. They're just not gonna make it. And no one's gonna take care of them, no one's gonna spray for the diligent. They're just gonna die. The white pines are pretty similar, they just don't seem to make it. Arborvitae or the deer.
I'd like to use the occidentalis.
Yeah.
I default to the plicatas because, well, at least they're in the US. It's not.
Well, but it, apparently it is a cultivar from a native and a non-native.
Yeah,
it's a hybrid.
It's a hybrid.
But
Yeah.
the functions it's serving are similar to the occidentalis, the cover, the same kind of little cones, and the deer resistance is its special power, being that
But
fragrant.
do they only browse on it in the wintertime? Do they tend to?
The
They don't
native
tend to-
arborvitaes,
they eat
depends
that
on the
year-round.
herd. They're-
Because
Dry 'em.
because I anticipated that we might have this discussion, and I looked on the NOFA guidelines and, or no, excuse me, is it the NOFA guidelines? And yeah, it was, and they suggested that you might be able to head that off like in the winter time when the deer are more likely to browse on them with
sprays and netting.
yeah, you got
Yeah.
the netting and the canvas.
People just
tarp.
don't tend to do it, and so you end up seeing them, the little, looks like the Q-tips plants, because
Yeah,
they've been
I
eating
know.
them 6 foot tall.
I know.
We've been doing this 40 years, and, we tried every evergreen, we've used Douglas firs.
Deer's gonna eat, deer's
Yeah,
gonna eat.
I know, we try,
The blue spruce just look like.
the blue spruce have the,
They get a fungus.
the fungus, they're no good. So, the good thing about the green giants is they're gonna live, and they're very hardy. There is a new variety too that doesn't grow so tall and rapid, so we try to use that. But you put them in, you can forget about them, they don't have to be watered, they don't have to be deer proof, there's no disease that get them, and they do it, so most of these homeowners aren't gonna go out there and deer spray them or do any of that, so, in a situation like this, we just think it's
And
like
it's necessary that you have to have that kind of screening there, like it can't be a different type of tree?
I just thought the neighbors
Can I-
would
we
probably
just felt the
appreciate
neighbors would appreciate having a screen.
Can I jump in here, because I have the Town of Greenwich Wetlands Commission planting list here. And at the top it says wetlands plantings native to the northeastern states. And here it says Thuja occidentalis.
That's the
That's the
American
one,
one.
it's the American
That's
one.
not,
That's the one that she was saying, the deer.
That's
that's
what I
not
would
the-
prefer to use if we didn't have so many deer.
but, okay, hold on, but is green giant
Different.
Thuja occidentalis?
No, plicata.
No,
It's a hybrid of two different
Okay.
species. It's
So-
Thuja plicata. and
I'm
it's-
lost here too with what they're talking about.
It's
Okay, yeah.
it's in the same family, it's just got a little tweak where it's, grows faster and more pyramidal, and it has a fragrant smell, which keeps the deer
That's
off
what
of it.
keeps the deer off of it.
But, right, but to the point I think you were trying to make is you were saying, hey, if we put a green giant, I'll just use a common name. I put a green giant in the backyard. You plant it and it grows. You're not adding chemical,
It's amazing how hardy they are.
so from a,
You can,
Conservation
they're drought
standpoint.
resistant, they're deer resistant, they're disease resistant, they're foolproof.
So
You
what's
can't
the-
kill them if you try.
so, are we just saying because you want it?
No,
I'm just
no.
saying because you want more native,
Yeah,
or is
we're
there?
Yeah.
trying to,
is
we're
there-
all on the
No,
same,
it's-
we're all building the
Yeah,
same.
that's what I'm
route.
saying, they work, right?
Yeah,
they
but
work.
it's
Yeah.
more than that.
No,
I
but
mean,
it's
I'd be
more
happy
of
to
the-
offline have a
what she's
discussion
getting at.
about
Oh, yeah,
that.
no, I'm
It's
just
more,
trying to
it's more
understand.
making it more native.
Yeah,
I understand
which
that.
we're 100% with,
Where
but
Jay's coming from is if there is a major erosion here during heavy rain events, the root systems of these trees will help prevent that from
They're,
further
they're a
aspects.
they're a good buffer planting, they'll act as water quality, because they have a good, root system, a good robust root system. So this whole back thing is designed both, it's, there's a bunch of different functions. It's native planting, there's flowers for pollinators, there's cover for birds and some other wildlife, and it's also it's a vegetative buffer strip for water quality improvement.
Yeah. So, okay, so can I just move on to the next one? So the other plant that you mentioned, again, I may be mistaken on this, but is that a cultivar?
The rosea is a selection. So it occurs naturally, but they have to select it and then continue it.
Okay.
So you can't just inject the pink.
So I mean, this is like your
Just to make it
specialty.
nice.
I'm gonna defer to you on this, but I mean, my point is that I always want to try to see native plants, straight native plants, because I think that they're better, they're more ecologically, beneficial to the property. Native plants are, one of the benefits of them is that they require less water, less
You're preaching to the choir.
There's so many
We're
reasons
100%
to
I
with
grow
it.
them side by side. The pink grows great as well. It keeps its growing capacities, but I'm fine to go back to white.
Okay, so the last thing is that buffer planting, since there is the outlet there where, the water flows over the land into the ditch that's on the other property, the neighboring property, would it be helpful to maybe make it a little bit more robust, to maybe bring it, I can't really tell how
Above
wide
the
that
side?
is. Maybe it is more robust than I'm thinking.
There's no concentrated flow on our property at all. The concentrated flow is here and over here.
But from the detention.
No, she's asking like how wide is it? Is it wide enough to sufficiently handle water running over it?
No. What I'm asking is, didn't you just say that the Coltex, when they fill up, they
Over here,
flow
yeah.
out and they go, don't we want to create as much buffer as possible for the neighbors?
Yeah. So Jay actually did a good job. He shows the Coltex here. He shows the little standpipe. And this buffer, I would say, is at least 10 feet wide, no?
Yeah, it's about 9.
More than that,
Yeah, 9 feet
8,
wide.
Okay.
So, and it'll also be, I'm sure this will be bermed up a little bit, so it'll even, when this water overflows here, it'll probably sit here and infiltrate into the ground for the plants there.
We want it to spread out and move slowly. That would be designed through here so that it would help infiltrate, and that'll help with the water quality. It's like a natural vegetative buffer strip.
And then just lastly, one thing that we often ask, often ask in a situation like this is to put sort of a demarcation feature so that the lawn doesn't creep into that, because let's say some of those.
We could put
No,
boulders if
we
you
could
want.
do boulders, but what do you prefer, the little posts or boulders?
Well, it's like we sometimes do split rail fence, sometimes we do the boulder demarcation.
I think the boulders would look natural here and be, again, part of that,
Just to kind of,
and it looks
discourage
nice,
the lawn
yeah,
creep.
I like the boulders.
yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully we
I
find
think that the fence would be,
They're harder
truncate
to
the backyard. and
maintain.
make it
Yeah,
How deep, I used to live around the corner from Relihan, so I know the property and the neighborhood really well. And all of Relihan is fill. I could tell you stories.
Yeah.
What is the distance from the arborvitae to the back of that deck?
Here?
No, like if I'm on the back deck looking out.
There to there? Oh, from the patio to the
Correct.
arborvitaes?
Yes, sorry, not the deck, but the patio.
Okay, I bet we're
It's 10.
Sounds good. To the arborvitae, you want from here?
Yeah. You're less than 20 feet.
And where would
So
you,
approximately 20 feet here.
where would you put boulders?
Right at the edge of the
Right at the
planting.
end,
Edge of the-
integrated into the planting, so it's plantings and boulders and.
I mean, I don't want to belabor my fellow commissioners. I think, thanks. Oh, let me pull the knife out. I think the arborvitae privet
No privet. No privet.
You're saying, don't call it a privet?
No, privet's a really nasty
Yeah.
plant. So it's like,
Well,
no,
okay,
no.
I'm saying as a feature, as looking at a green wall is very pleasant, people like
Right,
that. But I have arborvitae on my property, and I have a water condition, and I know that they serve as a buffer. I think, I find that pleasing. I think with natives in front of it is great. Once the what I was gonna say is, once the arborvitae grow in, you can't even walk through the arborvitae. So I think to have the boulders would be duplicative, and then I'm thinking of any future homeowner that's going to live there, they're gonna want a little bit of a backyard for kids to run around in. So I don't know whether, like, the boulders in this application, and I know we like demarcation and boulders when we put pools in upland review areas,
I don't
but
think it's gonna be a problem,
I
because it's
don't-
gonna be integrated into the bed line here. It's
Yeah, and that's
gonna
kind
be
of the
grass.
point, Michael,
Yes.
is that
And
the
then-
next homeowner might say, oh, we don't have enough backyard.
You
we
cut
wanna
all of it
take
down
these plantings
and put
out,
up a
and
white
the
picket
boulders
fence.
kind of keep-
We can make it
they-
really attractive, and, you know,
Yeah.
hopefully the homeowner, we've started it, they go out and they get some cornflowers and some bee balm. and
Right,
They
right.
have a native garden
Hey,
around here. and it's
Rick,
really attractive.
if we approve this application the way it is, right? So now there's a buffer of the arborvitae, and using Caroline's example, can the neighbor just go, I mean, sure, they could do anything they want, but technically, it's a regulated activity of removing all the trees, right? Like, just
Yes.
arbitrarily going in the backyard and cutting the trees down.
Well, people do it all the time.
Right, so I mean,
But that would be a violation, then, I think, is what you're asking.
yeah, so, I don't know, I think there's a balance between.
Well, I think then it would
landing
have to
boulders.
be put on,
We file the thing with the.
I think it has to be on the resolution.
Yeah, we file it on the land records,
Mhm.
that there's,
They
you know,
still
there's
do it.
native landscape elements that have to be, that are an integral part of the approval process for this,
Yeah.
and they must be maintained.
Mhm.
Okay, all I'm saying is I think there's a time and a place for boulders, and I don't think boulders are necessary on this
Well, it can be
application.
Well, not
integrated into the-
huge, not
Yeah,
like
They're
this.
sunken, you know.
Yeah, we're talking,
Like this.
like just a
Just-
demarcation.
Just big enough that the lawn guys can't pick it up. and move it.
Basically,
Right.
we call
Pick
them
up
man
lawnmower
boulders,
through
two men
there.
can pick them up, but one man can't.
Yeah,
That's what-
okay, all right,
And, you know, I think it's a nice, it's probably a nice feature.
okay.
I don't think we have.
I think
I'm
it
not
would
married,
look nice, too.
okay, I'm not married to this, thank you.
That's all I
All
know.
right.
Thank goodness.
Nice
Okay.
rocks.
It's pretty much, almost every commission asks for that these days. We're very used to it.
We've approved it on a lot of different applications.
Yeah. I like using boulders as a
Go ahead.
demarcation. I'm not
Go
a
ahead.
fan of it.
So just.
Yeah, no, look,
I knew he wasn't.
I'm just saying, when you have an expansive lawn, right,
Yeah.
and all of
A
this
big
lawn
property,
is an
yeah.
upland review area, I agree, a split rail fence, a boulder, when you have 20 feet by like 40 feet of lawn, that's where I was coming from. Nothing more to add,
But
thank
to
you.
your earlier point on the different application that we were talking about, you think it's really important to, in the upland review area?
That's the example I'm providing, is if you, if you put a pool inside the upland, it's off topic, okay.
Yeah.
These folks want to go home, thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank
We're
you.
digressing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll turn it over.
So,
Okay, does
Joe?
any other commissioner have a question? for him?
Thank you.
All right. Okay, Mr. Canis.
Okay, good evening. For the record, my name is Joseph Canis. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut with the firm Ty and Bond. Our office is in Shelton. We were retained by the commission for the review of this application. So I did issue a memo dated October 7th that had just 4 comments, which is probably a record low for me. But the application, overall was very well thought out. Obviously using the fresh meadow approach, so that sets, a much higher bar that they have to meet, as opposed to just using existing conditions. And again, the comments were minor. Mr. Mueller went through them, but again, stormwater maintenance and operations plan, I think it's a great idea to include that as a separate document, because a lot of times the plans do get lost, the homeowners lose track of those. The second one about the easement, this is just from working on other projects in town. I'm working on drainage improvements down in Salt Box Lane, that area. There are easements and then they end at a property line, but the pipe continues on the next property with no easement. I just want to make sure that there was, they did test to make sure there was no pipe entering onto their property, and it sounds like they have, so that's good news. The basement with the test holes, one of the things that struck me was, okay, this is pretty close to an intermittent water course, right? And they went really deep and didn't hit any groundwater, which I thought was kind of strange for an intermittent water course. But tonight's testimony indicated that there is fill there. And I also did look at some of the historic aerial photos going back to 1934. And it does show that there was a water course that came off where LaForge is now. But it was straight, and then it took a 45-degree turn. So that tells me that there's been a lot of land manipulation out there, even before the 1930s. So, it's entirely possible that things were reshaped. There's a bunch of fill there, and that's why they can go so deep and not hit groundwater on that particular parcel. And then the last comment is just, very basic, just show the inspection ports for the proposed Caltech units. And that was it.
So Joe, I'm going to go back to my question just in the topography.
Sure.
To me, it's feeling like the upper left corner there is the sunken part from a topography point of view. So I'm seeing the Caltex loaded on the right side instead of the left. So can you help me square the drain with the location? And I understood, if I understood the answer from Brian, it had to do that he wanted the sheeting to occur
Farther away.
naturally.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, I think that's a good reason to do it. The standpipe is over here in this location, right, and your test hole here is here, so you had to have confirmed ground information. Where that there's no groundwater beneath you, to well below the bottom of the system. So I think by putting it over here, I think that's fine. And also, you don't want to keep it too close to the neighboring property. You do want that separation distance. And the backyard here is only so wide, right? So you want to maintain, the separation from the neighboring property, right? Because you have to excavate for these systems. You also need to keep separation between the two systems, right? So they're not draining into each other. And then the other thing is you also have to take a look at the orientation of the long axis of the chambers, because you want them generally parallel to the contours. So that's why you say, for example, you couldn't flip one of these 90 degrees to try to get more room and get more space between them.
Right.
You're also limited by the actual contour lines themselves.
Right. So in your professional opinion, the location and also the volume and sizing of the current proposed plan has optimized the drainage situation?
Correct. Yeah, the chambers are certainly sized, and they more than meet the town's requirements.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other commissioner have questions or comments for Joe?
No.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now we'll open up to members of the public. I ask that when you come up to the podium, please identify yourself and your address.
Hello, good evening. I'm Lorraine Galino. I live at 71 Du Bois Street. I'm the property directly behind the new construction.
Could you spot on that map where your property might be located?
Right here.
Thank you.
If I could just say, the brook that they talked about actually was completely bone dry after the forage project was done by the town. So it was no longer a running brook. It was just pretty much empty unless there was a significant rain. But during the summer, it was dry. Even many times during the year, it was dry. So it wasn't until the new construction was next door, and then the other one, which I actually came here and spoke about, that we now have a fully all year round running brook. And you can actually see the water coming from the sump pump of that house. I believe it's 30.
Yeah, 30.
It runs constantly into the brook. I don't know about the other one on the forge that was also built with a full basement right next to this. Now it's a brook. Before it was, in fact, on the survey, on my property, it's listed as a ditch, not even a brook. So now I have a fully running brook. And now I'm getting another house with a full basement and retention systems. And we made a very nice presentation. He explained a lot, but I still know now that I'm going to have more water flowing into that area, into an already saturated area. And I sent videos that I took, and also one that my neighbor a little further down took, showing the water overflowing the banks, flooding the area that makes the turn into my backyard, and then flooding the other side of the area. So I know this all sounds wonderful about these retention things, but I know that they don't always work. And just putting more water into an already saturated area, to me, is just going to impact us and all the houses along the brook that now are going to have additional water from this basement, as well as the driveway and porch or patio, whatever else they're adding. I can also say that just looking at the plans, the location of where they're putting that, if they moved it over, those retention areas, if they moved it over to the area that I have, my property triangulates. So the area that they're positioning it is very close to the area that is the corner of my property that flows into my yard. If they moved it over, it would flow perhaps into the trees, that little forest area. It wouldn't impact my property as much. It would flow into that little wetlands tree area. I don't know what else to say except to say that I hope that everything possible could be done to prevent more impact to my house and all the neighbors' houses along that way.
Does this increase in flow come into your home? How is it affecting your living space personally? I know you're seeing I saw the video, but...
We don't have a basement.
Mm-hmm.
We have a crawl space.
Right.
I think all the houses on my side have crawl spaces. None of us have full basements because it has flooded. The crawl space has flooded in my house. We don't put anything that we don't care about down there. But, as I said, it was completely dry after the forage project. We were thrilled with the forage project because they basically detoured all the water that was flowing under the forge, under a pipe, I believe, under our street, and took away all that water. It was fabulous. But now we're adding all that water back in by letting all these houses have full basements. And I just think it's ridiculous.
Well, and you said one of the neighbors their sump pump is draining into it.
30.
That's the one that was the new construction that I came to oppose, and I was told that it was going to work. The retention systems were going to work, but I see that it flows constantly. I watch it flows constantly.
The sump pump.
That one in the basement.
Can I ask a question? Is number 30, is that the modern white farmhouse looking?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
And
a
then,
beautiful house.
all right, so the brook that we're speaking to, does that brook run, let me just think about streets. The boy runs perpendicular, right, it runs perpendicular to Relihan, and then it runs through, on the corner of Relihan, there's a corner lot leading to Maple, right? At Maple Street.
I think that's a different brook.
It's a different brook.
That's a different brook.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this one crosses the.
Yeah, that's not that
really.
Okay,
The
yep,
brook
just,
that-
I'm just,
Can I chime in or should I? The brook-
No, if you're gonna add, we'd love to hear from you, but you gotta come
I'll
up
send
here,
it.
identify yourself and your street address, and they can make all your comments.
thanks, that was helpful, that answered my question, thank you.
Hi, Maria McPartland, 59 Boy Street. So I am 3 houses down from Lorraine, so I have the history of the brook.
Sorry, could you point on the map approximately where your house might be in relation to that one?
So I'm here,
Thank you.
going towards the post road.
Thank you.
So the brook, originally, when the LaForge project was done in 2008, the brook ran behind the houses on LaForge, crossed underneath Relihan, Lorraine's property was the first one that had the brook, and then it turned and went down to 55 Du Bois, which is the last house on 59. So there was like 5 of us. And that's why like none of us were notified of this meeting, because Lorraine is next to the property, but we're not, even though our brook is. So La Forge, if you look at it, has remained dry all these years. So however it's been diverted, it went down La Forge and then up Du Bois Street, underneath Du Bois. And as Lorraine said, our properties remained dry, the brook remained dry all these years. And then when the houses started getting built, I wanted to say not just the house next to this proposal, but the one that was just built on the corner of La Forge and Relihan. So right across the street from the farmhouse that you were referring to, across the street, there's another large house that was built there with a full basement. That sump pump pumps into the beginning of the brook, goes underneath the street, and goes across into Lorraine's backyard, and then continues down our street, our yards. So it's, every time a new big house is built with a basement, more of it is diverted into our brook.
So is that the ditch that we were discussing earlier on, that we were trying to, because we're trying to determine whether that was a wetland or not, because it shows on the map?
Yeah, again, like Lorraine said, it was called wetland. It used to flow, it was just a nice little brook. Then it got heavier, then they did the La Forge project, they dried it up, it was great, it was just a ditch, and now it's a drainage now for all these sump pumps, and they keep getting diverted.
On the back, I think this is what we're talking about.
Oh, the other one, so there's the one that comes from the Heights, and it crosses over from the Heights underneath, I don't know where it goes from the highway, and then that goes by Baker Park.
Yeah.
Those houses, that is different. That one flows differently, and that one flows constantly as well.
The main
Ours was
flow for
completely
this one
dry.
is this way.
Right, but remember in the beginning, we were talking about, because on the map, it shows between 30 and 32, yes.
Yeah, there's a drainage easement here, and there's drainage that comes from this road and drains across this property.
Hey, Rick, real quick.
But the main source, the constant flow is this way.
That's the constant, right, okay, got it.
Wasn't this, I guess we're calling it a watercourse. I thought it was a ditch. Isn't its purpose, does the town created it to convey water from the top of Relihan?
Yeah, if you look at the wetland map, it
Hold on a
doesn't
second.
go into any water body.
Because I used to live in the neighborhood, so, and I apologize, I vaguely remember this. But I thought it had did the town create it? It had a purpose of conveying
It
water,
might have been
right?
a town-created thing that was underneath where the houses currently are. It was moved back in the early 50s or late 40s or something. It was moved back to build the houses. So I think it was a town diversion thing. I think that's what it was created. And then the town, as it started overflowing, I don't know, were you going to say something? No.
You can continue.
I don't know if my history is right, but I think that the town took care of the overflow problem with the La Forge project, but then as the building started, the water came back.
And then, so how's the water affecting you? Are you at a slightly higher topography? Isn't Du Bois a little bit taller than Relihan? So when you say flooding, I'm trying to understand. Like,
It's the yard that floods. Yeah, it's
your backyard
Yeah.
floods.
So it must be lower then,
The yard.
a yard.
Yeah, I don't know.
Does this intermittent brook flow through?
Yeah, so it starts at,
Yeah, so it's gotta be lower than. It's gotta be lower.
it starts at 72 and then goes down to 55. I'm sorry, 71, Lorraine, and goes to 55. And then at 55, it turns and goes underneath the street. And then I don't know where it goes from there.
Gotcha.
Out to the sound, I think, I don't know.
No, it stops at some point.
But like when you said it's dry, it's never dry. When you said you were there in August, it used to be dry. It used to be July, August, June, July, August, September. There was never anything in there. That's when you clean it out easily, and it's never dry anymore.
Is there currently a basement in the old home, or is that a crawl space, or?
There's a basement.
There is.
Was there some pump?
Yeah, that's that question. That's a good question. Is there a sump pump?
No, okay.
So the current home has a basement. So maybe after we hear this, I'd like to hear the current home versus the proposed. But please, if you have other comments.
I just wanted to say that, I really wanted to make the point that the house across the street also is constantly, there's some pump is going into that as well.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Brian, do you want to talk to that?
So what I'm trying to get at is if there's displacement from groundwater, and I know you've done the testings, if there is displacement compared to the current situation, how much larger, deeper will the proposed basement be?
So the proposed basement is actually at the same elevation as the existing basement. And the existing basement's only 7-foot ceiling height. What we did was we raised up the first floor of the house. So we raised the house up to match that basement elevation because there was no sump pump down there, and I didn't see any evidence in the test holes. Now again, the test holes were, you could tell the soil had been messed with. It still looked decently virgin to me because it could be 50, 60 years old. But I purposely looked at the old house to make sure that I wasn't going to go any deeper. And the fact that they didn't have a sump pump, like, made me feel more comfortable showing a basement. Because I've done a lot of houses where builders want a basement and I say no. And we do a slab on grade or a crawl space. Because groundwater is a big thing for me, especially if you don't have a certain slope and you're not pumping out and it's, flowing overland to another lawn area. A lot of times we have issues in town where it'll pump out and it'll flow into the road. And in the wintertime, when the groundwater is the highest, it'll be overflowing the most and it causes an icing condition. And it's a safety issue for cars, pedestrians, everything. So I look at the existing houses usually a lot when they have basements to determine, what worked in the past. Because a lot of times the old timers didn't have the calculators and stuff we had, but they still did it the right way. And as the neighbors mentioned, it's been getting worse and worse over time. A lot of times because people just don't follow what they're supposed to do. And I can tell you, if Rick wasn't around during this development, the oversight wasn't there.
So what is the nature of the construction of the basement? Is it block? Is it poured concrete, old stone?
It'll be poured concrete more than likely. Yeah.
And when you were in the basement, I assume you were in the basement, did you notice any line markings or evidence or
Right from
moldy
water.
smells?
I didn't, and it was a block foundation, but I didn't notice any of that. I didn't even notice any degradation in the concrete block. My first house had a concrete block foundation, and I had a sump pump down there, and near the sump pump, I could tell that the block was starting to erode from just water, just like the moisture in the air, because I didn't have a cover on that pump.
So if there's no sump pump currently, why are you installing, just curious, why are you installing a sump pump in the new construction?
I'm a sucker for preparation.
Okay.
That's the only reason. And that's why I have it designed inside the basement and not exterior. This house at 30 has 2 exterior pumps outside, which they obviously designed those because they had a groundwater condition when they dug these test holes. So they knew that they were going to have, and I don't know how deep this basement is. I don't know if they went lower with the first floor than what the original house had. I don't know much about this. We also don't know how these Coltec systems were installed. And like I testified earlier, the sump pumps for the house on 30, they don't go to a drainage system that stores water. They just go to a level spreader. That's why the neighbors are seeing a constant flow come out of them.
Hey, Rick, is this a new construction, 30?
No.
No?
So
Well,
what,
new construction, but it was like
7 years ago?
17?
Yeah, it was
16?
permanent in
That's pretty new.
7.
So that's-
They should have had,
yeah, they should have had.
they should have had the condition at that point to take a look at. That should be fed into
Underground detention.
underground detention,
Yeah, whoever designed this could say, they have whatever length of that level spreader is, they could say, hey, we have, 40-foot length, 2 feet wide, 2 feet deep, and this is the void ratio of the gravel, and this is how much volume we have.
but not when it's dry.
And
Okay.
it's never dry. Also, too, depending on the elevation of the pumps, which I mentioned earlier, the detail here shows these pumps to be 2 feet below the bottom of the footing, which if that footing is a typical footing, that's 15 inches thick. So you're talking about being 3 feet below the basement elevation, you don't need to be that deep with a pump. And that could be as simple as just adjusting the floats in those manholes. I was actually talking to her back there about does she know this neighbor? Is she a nice person? Because that could be an easy conversation, like, hey, can we just raise your floats up a little bit? Because that could really affect how much water is being discharged to this level spreader and overflowing during the wet season. And that we're coming into the wet season now.
Right.
Yeah, but even if there was one sump pump,
Yep.
okay, through a garden hose, okay, that's not gonna produce a lot of water.
No,
Okay, that's just not, I understand if I got an inch and a half bilge pump, and I was really putting it out, I could understand that kind of volume of water, but, a garden is just gonna flow, so there's something else going on.
It's also all the water that's in the roof gutters and coming down the leaders that's going through the level spreader, right? 'Cause you
No,
said they don't
actually,
have
no, not on,
underground retention.
So, okay, Rick.
not on 30.
Rick, as a
They go to a
follow-up,
separate
can we
system.
just check on 30?
No.
What do you mean we can't?
No, it's done, it's CO'd.
Unless it's in violation of.
What's in
what
viol,
we-
but, at this point, what would you do? How would you approach that?
Well,
I do agree there is a larger issue happening
There's
here.
a letter in that file, was inspected, was signed off.
Inspected, 30?
I can get it, I didn't have the whole file, but there was a
I mean,
letter
let's say they didn't put the sump pumps at the elevation that they were supposed to. Let's say they put them 2 feet
or
lower
maybe
than
they
they were
didn't feed
supposed to.
or maybe they didn't feed, or maybe they didn't put in, I don't know.
That could be an easy,
Hey, Brian, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, really, just super quick. Can you explain why you put the sump pump pits on the exterior of the stem wall as opposed to in the interior of the basement? And
he put his in the interior.
and then as it relates to number 30, well, so the example I'm giving is builders, when they build houses, they can put the pit inside the basement, or they could stick the pit outside of the home. Why do you put it outside of the home?
Generally, and Joe, I would like your opinion on this too. Generally, we put them on the outside of the home when there's a more severe groundwater condition, because you're trying to keep the water from entering the basement before it's pumped out.
How do you get the water into, is it the footing drain? So the footing drains aren't feeding inside of the house, they're feeding outside of the house?
Yes, they'll run outside. In an extreme groundwater condition, I've done them outside with its exterior footing drain, and then I've done an interior grid system with an interior pump that's separated completely. And even some of these houses will have like a structural slab, a waterproof slab, that's hydraulically rated for a certain depth of water up against the outside of the foundation.
So anecdotally, if you have a property that's impacted by wetland, or not impacted by wetlands, but a property that abuts wetlands,
Or impacted
and
by
you
high
see,
groundwater.
and you see sump pits that are the exterior,
Oh yeah,
you might scratch your head on that?
Yeah, and I would say,
Or you're just trying to keep the wetland from coming inside the house, that's what you're saying?
The
You're trying to-
groundwater.
Joe, you're trying to keep the groundwater coming in the house?
Right, yeah, I agree with Brian.
So it's just a loop, it's a never-ending loop.
Yeah, just for the record, I do agree with Brian that typically if you do have a larger groundwater problem, you will try to keep the sump pump on the outside, right? Just because, with a larger groundwater problem, there's a larger risk of failure. And if it fails outside of the house, it's better than failing inside.
So it would be fair to say that Mr. Muller's design is to mitigate any water that comes to the interior. He's not like number 30 where he's like, hey guys, come take a look at my application. I've got 2 sump pits out in the backyard.
Right.
And then the condition would be perpetual water into the ditch or the water course.
Right, yeah, the way I view it is the current design, right, because it's documented that groundwater is below the basement level. It's more of a belt and suspenders type of design, just in the event that something happens. So, it's always a good idea to have that. It might not ever be used. The pump might just rust in place, because it's not used.
But in the future for the commission, if the engineer has sump pits on the exterior of the
We
foundation.
know why.
We'll
know why.
Or you
have
can
a-
make that assumption. Yeah, some guys put them outside, even in our case, on this property, some guys like them outside.
Oh, okay.
But that's still a thing to me would be like, hey, let me look at the soil testing then and see how high mottling is too. They may not witness groundwater, but if mottling's only 24 inches below grade, who knows? And water might be that high in January, February.
Thank you.
So you just don't, it's,
Good to know.
every property's different. And to go back to your comment about the garden hose running out here, yeah, it may not affect the flow and the overall flooding of the area, but what it could affect is under a small rain event, if that water's constantly flowing just a little bit through the brook, whether I can see it or not, if it's in all the riprap or anything, what it's doing is it's keeping that small portion of the bottom of the brook completely saturated at all times. So when it does heavy rain and it's not completely dry, there's no infiltration whatsoever. It's just gonna flow over land all the way down, and it just slowly gets impacted more and more as the watershed grows bigger downstream. This has to be a huge watershed based on the videos I saw. It's a lot of water.
It's a lot of water.
And the other issue, if you have a sump pump that's running constantly, it's also not only an infiltration issue, but it's also a potential scour issue downstream, right? Because it's constantly going.
So are what both of you guys are saying is that what the neighborhood, again, I used to live in the neighborhood, and I mean, I had 2 babies at the time, so I don't remember anything. And I always remember this to be a contentious issue. So are you saying this is a watershed issue, and anecdotally, like people are perceiving it to be the house with the sump pump? Is there a larger, because I also, in very close proximity, you have I-95, which we've already talked about in prior applications. You have I-95, which, based on the Thorndale Circle application, I'm sure there's a discharge onto Maple Street. It crosses Maple Street. It's a full running brook. It's a lot of water that's always there. And I don't really know where that goes, but it feeds into the Relihan neighborhood, right where the runoff, the brook, I-95, the Maple Street into Relihan Brook I just see it stop at it goes through someone's front yard, like there's a bridge over it. But then there's the Du Bois, Relihan ditch we're talking about, which is very close proximity to this.
Yeah, and I have to take...
So is what we're saying is all this water just being conveyed through the ground from a larger watershed?
I don't know off the top of my head what the contributing watershed is. Our firm did do the LaForge drainage design, but I had toddlers when that was in design, so I don't quite remember. I didn't work on one myself. But I would say, I would say, the watershed is part of it. It sounds like, from the testimony we heard from the neighbors that once that project came online, that that brook was fairly dry. So it could be that there have been changes in the watershed. And it might not just be one house, it might be a combination of different factors. It could, if this, could be something on 95 if that drains in there. So it's hard to pinpoint at one particular source. I said earlier, I looked back through the 1934 aerial photos, and that was basically all farms in that area. And what it looked like, what I suspect, I can't really, say for sure, but what it looks like, there was probably a natural stream that went through that area, and it was channelized at some point, even before 1934 when there were farms in the area, because those channels are very straight. So I think what you see, the drainage system that you see on LaForge is probably a conveyance of what was once a natural watercourse, that had turned into ditches at one point, and then got filled in as LaForge was built.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else would like to talk?
This is one question. Is there be a footing drain? Is there be a footing drain in the house?
On the exterior, yeah.
Where's that discharge?
Into the sump pump. Inside the house. So there'll be a footing drain that runs around the outside on top of the footing, right? And it'll pop into the house through the footing somewhere into wherever that sump pit will be. So more than likely, I don't have the foundation plan in front of me, but wherever, if they put a mechanical room down there, or if there ends up being a bathroom down there, they'll need a sewage ejector pit to get to the sewer line, because the sewer line's higher than the bottom of the basement. So that's where they would put the sump pump, wherever that may be, whether it's here, the footing drains will run all the way around, and then they'll pop through the footing wherever that sump pump hole is in the basement, and the footing will run into there. But we shouldn't see any water going into that footing, that pit. That pit should stay dry. That's another reason why I like the pit too, is you don't even need to put a pump in there right now. Everything gets put in place, you can stick the pump in there whenever you want. I did a house when I first became a PE with my father, and we put a pit down in the basement, and we never saw water in there ever. We just had a pit just to have it.
Good
case.
thoughts.
Yeah, just in case, yeah.
Okay, Rick, what do you think we should do with this then?
Well, I mean, there's a number of things that, I mean, you have an engineer confirming that no adverse impact based on the drainage plan that's been provided.
Mhm.
There's an extra measure of protection with the sump pump. We've had it independently confirmed based on Joe's testimony. There's an issue, and it sounds like it may be attributed to some other construction. So I don't know what further they can do here, except maybe further diminish the amount of runoff by things like we talked about tonight. Although I don't like design, you're really coming up with a design here at a meeting, but things like the patio. This is the same thing I say about like pervious pavement on residential properties. I'm not a big fan on residential properties because the maintenance requirement is a little too great for the individual homeowner. I mean, you really have to vacuum, you have to have the right equipment, you have to vacuum it out, that kind of stuff. But in adding it to like a patio here, that might be something that's doable, or even when you talked about doing the bluestone with the sort of like what they've done on the other projects. I think per the regulation, they've addressed what this particular property owner needs to do. I mean, you can tweak things, what we're tweaking here. You can make a recommendation, they go with the bluestone, you make that a condition of an approval, that on the patio, you further manage the types of species that you're gonna put in the planting plan, you add a demarcation feature. I was taking notes.
Yeah, you got that.
All the things that we talked about, you just gonna put the inspection port in, and then the details on the invasives and the organic management. Those are things that you can put on the plan or in a plan that can be referenced in the document. I don't know what else that they can do for this particular property. It's just sitting here listening to the conversations. It sounds like it's a bigger issue with past construction than this one. I mean, I think I would most likely move forward with it and condition these things that I had taken notes on.
Okay. So I guess then what we should do is close the public hearing at this point. Correct?
You have to vote to close the public hearing, and then direction to craft a resolution at the next meeting.
Okay. Jim, you want to have a motion to close the public hearing?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I make that motion to close the public hearing with respect to EPC number 23-2024 with respect to 32 Relihan Road.
Make a motion to second the closure of the public meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
It's very entertaining presentation.
That in front of you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, next order of business is adjourned.
I'll make a motion to adjourn our regular meeting with public hearings of tonight's Environmental Protection Commission dated October 9th, 2024.
And second that adjournment.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Channel 79, we're off the air.